Chapter 833. Tan Xiu took out a cigarette, lit it, and took a few deep puffs before saying, "Everything is ready except for the final push. We'll leave this place after all buys the herbs I need to clean up that old geezer Dao Master poison. However, I've called Light and Dark to come here for the sake of safety." "Light and Dark are coming here, boss?" asked Jin Shi in surprise. "That's what I'm about to tell you." Tan Xiu nodded and said, "I told Ao to inform them. They're expected to arrive in Qinglin County this evening. You're to quietly go to Qinglin County in the afternoon and wait for them in the hotel suite we booked last time. Then bring them here." "Understood." Jin Shi nodded without a word and then dashed toward the distance. Not far away, Zhang Xinyue quickly came to Tan Xiu after consoling herself and asked, "Can I go with you to Qinglin County? I haven't taken a bath for several days and I feel uncomfortable all over." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "I can feel at ease if Jin Shi goes alone. But if you go with him and his identity is exposed, you're bound to fall into Dao Master Poison's hands. Just bear with it. We'll leave this place in 2 days at most." A disappointed look flashed in Zhang Xinyue's eyes as she bitterly said, "This is the first time I haven't taken a bath for such a long time since I was a child. It's really uncomfortable. Also, your clothes. Your coat is fat and big, but your underwear." Tan Xiu could only force a wry smile inwardly. His interspatial ring was full of his own clothes, so he never thought of bringing a few sets of girls' underwear. In such a situation, he didn't want Zhang Xinyue to take risks. Suddenly, Tan Xiu's expression moved and he hesitantly said, "I can help you if you want to take a bath." "But can I really take a bath?" asked Zhang Xinyue with a pleasant surprise. "But what?" Tan Xiu steeled his heart and said, "I'll set up an array. But I want to be nearby when you take a bath. I can't be more than 10 meters away from you." "Huh?" Zhang Xinyue's pretty face blushed. But then, she recalled that she and Tan Xiu already had intimate contact, so she simply said, "I'm willing as long as you don't stare at me while I'm bathing." Tan Xiu secretly sighed and said, "Let's go back to the cave. It's not very safe outside, and there's a chance that we'll be exposed after we set up the formation." Finished. He turned back to the cave and quickly arranged a auspicious rain array. Then, he arranged a diversion array on the periphery and said, "Take off your clothes and go inside. You have to bathe quickly, at least in 10 minutes, or there won't be any hot water left. Undress." Despite having a straightforward character, Zhang Xinyue was a bit bashful at the moment and hesitantly asked, "Can you turn around?" "Aye." Tan Xiu took out toiletries from his interspatial ring and handed them to her, saying, "Don't worry. As long as you stepped into the formation, the people outside would not be able to see what was happening inside. On the other hand, you'll be able to see what's happening outside from within the formation." "Really?" Zhang Xinyue hesitated to confirm. Tang Xiu didn't answer Zhang Xinyue but directly stepped into the array. To Zhang Xinyue's surprise, Tan Xiu took a few steps forward and his figure immediately disappeared from her sight as though he vanished into thin air. After a while, Tan Xiu came out of the formation and looked at Zhang Xinyue, saying, "Do you believe me now?" Zhang Xinyue nodded with satisfaction. After she stepped into the formation, her clothes were drenched by the rainwater that kept falling inside. The cold rainwater made her shiver and she hurriedly retreated. With an angry look on her face, she asked, "Didn't you say there's hot water inside? How come the rainwater inside is so cold?" "I told you to take off your clothes before you step inside," said Tan Xiu helplessly. "Do you see that line over there? You can take off your clothes as long as you step over that line. Then, you'll have to cross the second line to be drenched by the rainwater. After you cross the first line, you'll have to wait for more than 10 seconds before the rainwater turns hot." "What's the reason?" asked Zhang Xinyue curiously. "I used my magic power to wrap the auspicious rain array." Tan Xiu forced a smile and said, "The high temperature of the raging fire will cause the rainwater to heat up without destroying the formation. Forget it, you won't understand even if I tell you." Just hurry up if you want to take a bath. My magic power can't support it for too long. Alright. Zhang Xinyue stepped into the formation again. Although she was a bit hesitant when she took off her clothes, she chose to believe in Tan Xiu when she recalled that he had disappeared just now. When she stepped into the second line naked, she could clearly see Tan Xiu standing outside the formation, his hands forming seals as a layer of flame blazed outside the second line. She was shy. That was because when she was naked, Tan Xiu was standing 7 or 8 meters in front of her. She was shocked. It was because of the miraculous formation and the flame that suddenly shrouded the outside. The water temperature was heating up, and the biting cold finally disappeared. She then quickly washed her body with a bit of shyness. It could be said that this was the fastest and shyest bath she had ever had in her life. After all, taking a bath while looking at Tan Xiu standing 7 or 8 meters away from her was a stimulating feeling that made her heart surge and ripple. Several times. She couldn't help but recall the feeling of ecstasy that night, as well as the scene of their passionate collision. Hurry up, I can still hold on for 2 more minutes. Tan Xiu's voice came from outside. Upon hearing his words, Zhang Xinyue quickened her washing speed. After more than a minute, she asked aloud, I'm done with my bath, but will the water temperature suddenly turn cold when you're done? Do you still remember the 2 lines I told you? Tan Xiu said. Step out after you're done. All right. After Zhang Xinyue stepped out and spoke to Tan Xiu, she suddenly realized that Tan Xiu only gave her some toiletries before taking a bath, but he didn't give her any clean clothes to change into. Tan Xiu's complexion was a bit pale. Using his magic power to light the fire consumed a lot of his energy. After he stopped casting the spell, he silently took out a set of clean clothes from his interspatial ring and put them on the bed in the cave. Then, he said, I'll leave the clothes here. I'll go out first. Outside the cave. Xue Sha and He Xiong were hiding in the bushes, observing the distance with a mini telescope. Sensing that someone was approaching, the duo immediately gestured Tang Xiu to keep quiet after seeing him. Then, Xue Sha leaned toward Tang Xiu and whispered, Boss, it's about 450 meters in the 4 o'clock direction. It's the Qingqing Monastery's people. We've observed him. He's alone and he's hiding in the bushes over there to rest. Where did he come from? Asked Tan Xiu with a frown. From Qinglin County. It looks like he's heading to Qingqing Monastery, said Xue Sha. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and then said, You two stay here and protect Zhang Xinyue. I'll follow him later to see what he wants to do. Will it be dangerous, boss? Asked Xue Sha worriedly. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, I'll immediately flee if I encounter Dao Master Poison before all comes back. Don't worry. It won't be easy for Dao Master Poison to kill me as long as he doesn't use poison. 10 minutes later. Tan Xiu secretly tailed the Qingqing Monastery expert, who had already rested, and quietly rushed toward the direction of Qingqing Monastery's residence. After several hours of hurrying, he finally appeared near the Daoist temple that had stopped burning. The Qingqing Monastery man hid in the dark and observed for a while before he came out of the bushes. He knelt in front of the ruins of the Daoist temple and kowtowed a few times before rushing to the north. His movements were very light and vigilant. From time to time, he observed the movements in the surroundings. After coming to the ruins of the collapsed tallest building, he dashed toward the northwest and appeared in another courtyard half a minute later. After tailing him, Tan Xiu watched the Qingqing Monastery man enter a side room. He released his spiritual sense and was surprised to see that the man was holding a 1-meter-tall celadone vase with both hands and forcefully turning it. The originally tightly stitched walls slowly split open, revealing a spacious staircase leading downwards. Tan Xiu closely followed him. As the man went further down the staircase and the wall was about to close, Tan Xiu instantly rushed inside. Wang Feng. Several voices quickly came, followed by several figures appearing in front of the man. Tears overflowed from the eyes of the man called Wang Feng. He looked at the several men in front of him and hugged each of them. Then, he bitterly said, our Qingqing monastery is done for. Of the 64 people who were left on the surface, only 8 survived. For the sake of unnecessary sacrifices, the monastery master didn't let us open this dungeon or let you out. A middle-aged man hurriedly asked, "How is the monastery master?" "The monastery master is fine, but the deputy monastery master is dead," said Wang Feng. "I came back this time under the monastery master's order to quietly take you out and then escape as fast as possible." The middle-aged men were silent for a while. One of them slowly took out a bunch of keys and said, "I'm going to open the dungeon's door. We can't let them die here even if they made mistakes before." "Understood." They nodded silently. A few minutes later, as the doors of the 6 cells were opened, 6 men and women of the Qingqing monastery who had committed mistakes and were imprisoned here quickly came out. Among them, the fastest one was a young man. Wang Rui. Tan Xiu hid in the corner of the staircase, but his spiritual sense could clearly see that the young man was Wang Rui. Wang Rui quickly ran to the front of them and hurriedly asked, "What's the situation up there? Has the enemy retreated?" "They haven't left yet, but they've been searching for our Qingqing monastery's people in the vicinity of Qingqing Mountain," said Wang Feng bitterly. "Including me, only 8 of those who remained up there survived." The monastery master ordered all the Qingqing monastery survivors to seize the time to escape. Wang Rui's pupils shrunk. He suddenly grabbed the man's arms and asked, "What about my father? Where is he?" Wang Feng's expression turned dark as he said, "I'm sorry for your loss, Wang Rui. When the deputy monastery master fled to Qinglin County, the enemy caught up with him. He passed away." "What?" Wang Rui's body trembled and he was petrified on the spot. Chapter 834. Tan Xiu didn't expect that Wang Rui was still alive. Through his divine sense, he observed Wang Rui's pain. He sighed and walked out from the corner of the stairs. He had seen the tragedy of the Qingqing sect with his own eyes. Originally, he thought that he could save the remaining people of the Qingqing sect, but in the end, he was poisoned and seriously injured, so that nearly half of the remaining people of the Qingqing sect were killed. "Who is it?" There were a total of 10 people in the dungeon. Except for Wang Rui, the other 9 people all noticed Tan Xiu's figure and shouted loudly. Tan Xiu shook his head and sighed, "You don't need to be nervous. I have no malice toward you. It's a pity that Dao Master poisoned us before he attacked. Otherwise, I would have been able to guarantee the safety of the remaining people of Qingqing Monastery for the time being." "It's you." Wang Feng was pleasantly surprised upon seeing Tang Xiu. He ran to Tang Xiu under everyone's watchful eyes, knelt on his knees and kowtowed a few times. Only then did he crawl up and gratefully said, "I never thought that you were still alive. If you hadn't saved us that night, I'm afraid that the remaining dozen of us would have died. I am Wang Feng of the Qingqing faction. You are Wang Feng's savior." Tan Xiu patted his shoulder and walked to the front of Wang Rui, helplessly saying, "The dead can't be resurrected. My condolences. You helped Viviani in the South China Sea, so I'll help you kill Dao Master Poison this time to return the favor." Wang Rui didn't expect to see Tan Xiu here, nor did he expect that the person who helped his Qingqing monastery that night was Tan Xiu. However, there was a hateful look in his eyes as he asked, "You mean, the person who killed my father and destroyed my Qingqing monastery is called Dao Master Poison?" "The one who destroyed your Qingqing sect was Dao Master Poison's disciple," said Tan Xiu. "It's also Dao Master Poison who is now hunting the Qingqing sect's members everywhere. Your father was not killed that night. He should have been found and killed by Dao Master Poison later. Wang Rui, put away your hatred. I've avenged you." Wang Rui was silent for a long while before he slowly asked, "Is that Dao Master Poison really that strong?" Tan Xiu said, "Invulnerable to swords and spears, flying in the sky and burrowing into the earth. He was so strong that many ordinary people couldn't even imagine it. Even if all the original members of your Qingqing sect were to join forces, they wouldn't be able to withstand a single slap from him." Plop! Wang Rui knelt in front of Tan Xiu and said word by word, Tan Xiu, I know I don't have the ability to take revenge, but I hope you can take me with you when you kill Dao Master Poison. I want to see him die with my own eyes. Tan Xiu hesitated for a moment before he nodded and said, I promise you. But what are you going to do next? If you go out rashly now and Dao Master Poison finds you, I'm afraid you won't be able to escape death. Senior, are you still unable to beat Dao Master Poison? Asked Wang Feng. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, I might be able to kill him if it's a real fight. However, the reason he was called Dao Master Poison was because he was proficient in poisons, and his method of poisoning was mysterious and unpredictable. I didn't know the poison he was using, so I fell for it easily. For example, that night, if he hadn't been poisoned first, it would have been possible for him to have protected the remaining people of your Qingqing sect. What should we do then? Asked Wang Feng bitterly. Don't worry. I've already sent people to find the herbs I need, said Tan Xiu. As long as I can find all the herbs I need, I can refine the poison-dispelling pill. As long as I take the pill in advance, even if I can't be immune to all poisons, common poisons will no longer trouble me. What herbs do you need, Senior? Asked Wang Feng quickly. There are a lot of herbs stored in our Qingqing sect's underground warehouse. Maybe you can find what you need. Tan Xiu's expression shifted and he quickly told Wang Feng the herbs he needed. He didn't realize this problem before. The Qingqing sect was located in the depths of Qingqing Mountain and had a unique advantage when it came to gathering herbs. It wasn't strange for it to store a lot of precious herbs. Wang Feng said, Senior, please come with us. Wang Feng said, the underground warehouse is nearby. I know several kinds of herbs you just mentioned are stored there. Let's go. Tan Xiu didn't want to delay and directly left the dungeon with everyone. The Qingqing sect's underground warehouse was located in a high-walled courtyard in the northeast corner. In the past, it was the place where the Qingqing sect stored their treasures and was also a forbidden area in the eyes of most people. But now that the Qingqing sect had suffered a great disaster, the previous rules were no longer binding them. At the underground warehouse. Aside from the spacious hall under the stairs, there were 6 storehouses on both sides of the corridor inside, where some precious treasures of the Qingqing sect were stored. The precious herbs were placed in the outermost 2 storehouses. As the door of the storehouse was opened, Tan Xiu stepped into the first room and saw 3 rows of shelves filled with all kinds of precious herbs. There were hundreds of them, and Tan Xiu could see more than a dozen of wild ginseng that was more than 500 years old. A few minutes later, Tan Xiu found some herbs he needed, but after checking all the herbs in the 2 storehouses, he found that he was still missing 2 kinds of herbs, namely the wild goose grass and the arbutus flower. Wang Rui, who had been following Tan Xiu, knew that there were still 2 kinds of medicinal herbs that had yet to be found. Then, he said, we've never heard of these 2 names, wild goose grass and arcane rose. Can you draw them? We'll look for them later. No problem. Tan Xiu took out a pen and paper and quickly drew the 2 herbs. After watching for a while, Wang Rui frowned and said, Isn't this arbutus flower a pitcher plant? It's just a very common weed. It's everywhere near the swamp in the west of Qingqing Mountain. That's right, there are some in the dungeon I was locked up in before, but only a few of them. Pitcher plant? Tan Xiu forced a wry smile inwardly. Although he had read many books on herbs, he had never seen the introduction of the arbutus flower. It turned out that this herb was actually called pitcher plant on Earth. It must be noted that the arbutus flower could be refined into a medicinal liquid that could promote blood circulation and remove blood stasis, as well as strengthen the muscles and bones. It had a very good effect on ordinary people and cultivators. If it was an extremely old arbutus flower, it would even be beneficial to immortals. Earth. It was truly a huge treasure land. Tan Xiu sighed and asked, since the arbutus flower can be found, what about the wild goose grass? Do any of you know about this herb? No, I don't. Never heard of it. Everyone shook their heads with bitter expressions in their eyes. Since no one knows about it, then we can only wait and see, said Tan Xiu. I've already sent someone to buy it. Maybe we can find it. All right. At this moment, everyone could only pin their hopes on the people sent by Tan Xiu. As soon as Tan Xiu stepped out of the storehouse, he suddenly asked, "Are you selling these herbs from your Qingqing monastery? I can buy them at a high price if you're willing to sell them. Or, you can exchange them with something else." "We won't sell them, but we can exchange them," said Wang Rui without hesitation. "If you can exchange a cultivation technique with us, Tan Xiu, you can take away all the herbs in these 2 storehouses." Upon hearing this, the others immediately looked excited and nodded in agreement with Wang Rui. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment before he shook his head and said, "Cultivation techniques are no trifling matter and can't be easily taught to outsiders. However, if all of you really want to become stronger, then I can pass down some cultivation techniques to all of you. Even though it won't allow all of you to become cultivators that can soar through the sky and overturn oceans, it's still possible for all of you to improve your strengths by over 10 times. All right." Wang Rui immediately agreed. Qinglin County. In the office of the County Public Security Bureau Chief, Zhu Honggua's brows were tightly knitted as he smoked a cigarette. Opposite him were the first and second leaders of the County Party Committee, as well as the captain of the Criminal Police Squad, Li Gangda. The second leader of the Municipal Party Committee was smoking cigarettes with a frown on his face. "Everyone, we must think of a solution. The constant murder cases in Qinglin County have attracted the attention of the province. Furthermore, these murders have caused panic among the people and have seriously affected the stability of Qinglin County. If we can't apprehend the fierce beast and completely solve this matter, I'm afraid none of us here will have a good ending." Shao Kong, the second leader of the Municipal Party Committee, pinched the cigarette butt and spoke with a gloomy face. "We've thought of all the solutions we can think of and done everything we can," said Zhu Honggua helplessly. "But the culprit is obviously not an ordinary person. It's too difficult to apprehend him and bring him to justice. The higher-ups have already sent some people down, but we don't know when they will arrive," said Shao Kong. "But we can't count on the higher-ups completely. We must at least wait for them to arrive before we can grasp the whereabouts of the culprit." "You mean, we should do the intelligence work first?" asked Zhu Honggua. "That's right." Shao Kong nodded. Knock, knock. The office's door was knocked as a middle-aged man in a police uniform pushed the door and quickly reported, "Leaders, there are 2 women outside. They said that they were sent by the higher-ups." 2 women. Everyone's expression shifted. Shao Kong directly got up and quickly said, "Take us to see them." A minute later, everyone saw the 2 women waiting in the hall outside. If Tan Xiu were here, he would definitely be able to recognize them at a glance. They were Electro Lady and Aqua Babe. "Ladies, Electro Lady waved her hand to interrupt Shao Kong and straightforwardly said, "We don't need to know who you are. Your task is very simple. Find a way to help us find the whereabouts of the culprit. We're responsible for capturing him, or killing him. These are our IDs." After saying that, the 2 women took out their green books and gave them to Shao Kong to have a look. Shao Kong could only force a wry smile inwardly. The moment he saw the big characters on the green book, he knew how special the identities of these 2 women were. After returning the green book to the 2 women with a bit of respect, he said, "We haven't been able to grasp the whereabouts of the culprit yet, but give us some time. I believe we can find him as soon as possible and then report the news to you. Take note of our contact information." Electro Lady nodded and said, "We'll look for him in Qinglin County before we get any information from you. If you find him, notify us using the contact information I gave you." Chapter 835. Outside the cave, Zhang Xinyue was full of worry. She kept looking in the direction of Qingqing Monastery, fearing that Tan Xiu would encounter danger after leaving this place. Beside her, Mo had brought back a lot of medicinal herbs, but it seemed that he was still missing 2 herbs. "Oh, is the Qingqing Monastery really that miserable?" Zhang Xinyue had never cared about the Qingqing Monastery's affairs. She didn't ask about it even when a powerful enemy severely injured Tan Xiu. She knew that she didn't have the ability to help and was just a passerby. But now, she couldn't help but ask about it because she was worried about Tan Xiu. It's very miserable. Mo nodded. It's almost no different from the extermination of the monastery. Even the entire Qinglin County is now in a jittery atmosphere because that powerful enemy is looking for Qingqing Monastery's disciples everywhere. He's killing everyone he finds. Zhang Xinyue's face turned pale. Just as she was about to speak, her spirit suddenly jolted. She saw more than a dozen figures rushing over from the distance, and the one in the front was Tan Xiu, whom she was worried about. "Oh, how's the medicinal herbs?" asked Tan Xiu immediately after he arrived. He was thinking about refining the poison-dispelling pill. Mo glanced at the Qingqing Monastery's disciples. He was slightly surprised when he saw Wang Rui and immediately replied, "There are 2 medicinal herbs that I haven't found yet. I've been to the medicinal herb markets of several cities and also found some medicinal herb merchants who run medicinal herb businesses, but I still couldn't find them." "Which 2 medicinal herbs?" asked Tan Xiu with furrowed brows. "Arrowroot flower and golden needle leaf," answered Mo. "Did you find the wild goose grass?" Tan Xiu stared blankly and hurriedly asked. "Yeah, I bought it from a herb merchant." Mo nodded. "However, the price is a bit too high. A wild goose grass costs 180,000 yuan. Moreover, it's not negotiable. Let alone 180,000 yuan, it's worth it even if the price is 100 times more expensive," said Tan Xiu with satisfaction. "Give me the wild goose grass first and keep the other herbs. Also, they are Qingqing Monastery's disciples who survived by luck. Take them to a nearby place. I need to hurry up and refine the poison-dispelling pill." "Light and dark have arrived nearby, boss," said Mo. Tan Xiu nodded and said, "Tell them to be on standby." Subsequently, Tan Xiu set up a feng shui array in the cave to prevent the medicinal efficacy from leaking and being noticed by people nearby. The demon god spirit devourer cauldron was a top-grade cauldron for refining elixirs. Tan Xiu stayed in the cave for 2 days and only managed to refine a dozen poison-dispelling pills. "Oh!" The moment Tan Xiu stepped out of the cave, he shouted in a deep voice. Mo and the others quickly appeared, and even more than a dozen people from the Qingqing sect rushed over. All of them looked at Tan Xiu with anticipation in their eyes. "Oh, you stay here and wait for my news," said Tan Xiu. "Jin Shi and Xue Sha will leave with me, and so will Wang Rui." Wang Feng hurriedly said, "Senior, we will also go with you." Tan Xiu waved his hand and said, "You're too weak. You'll just be a burden if you follow me. At that time, if a fight really breaks out between Dao Master Poison and me, it will be very difficult for me to protect you. So, except for Wang Rui, the rest of you stay here and wait for news." Zhang Xinyuan knew that she couldn't help, so she grabbed Tan Xiu's arm and said with concern, "The great ancestor once said that we should fight if we can, and run if we can't. As long as there's life, there's hope. Safety is the most important. Don't worry." Tan Xiu nodded. "I know what to do." Qinglin County. The warm sun shone on the earth, and a gentle breeze blew past, blowing away the colorful flowers. Originally, this warm season was the most enjoyable time for people. But now, the sky above Qinglin County was filled with a murderous aura. Even the pedestrians on the streets were somewhat worried. County Public Security Bureau. Li Gongda, the captain of the Municipal Criminal Police Unit, and Zhu Honghua, the director of the Qinglin County Public Security Bureau, were in the conference room discussing the coordination of the surveillance personnel. Bang! Bang! The conference room's door was knocked as a middle-aged policeman in uniform entered the room and quickly reported, "Two leaders, the higher-ups have sent someone down." Li Gongda and Zhu Honghua exchanged dismayed glances with a strange expression. However, since it was someone sent by the higher-ups, they naturally didn't dare to neglect it. After coming out of the conference room, they saw Tan Xiu, Jin Shi, Shui Sha, and Wang Rui outside. Divine Dr. Tang. Zhu Hongguo looked surprised. He knew Tan Xiu. To be precise, Tan Xiu saved his life at the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Ga's villa complex a few days ago. I heard that you're having a headache trying to catch Dao Master Poison, so I came to see the situation. Tan Xiu nodded. If you can tell me Dao Master Poison's whereabouts, I can either capture or kill him. Divine Dr. Tang, is the Dao Master Poison you're talking about that green-robed murderer? Asked Zhu Hongguo, confused. Also, he's too powerful. You. Tan Xiu took out the green book and handed it to the two men, saying, it's that old geezer. I know he's very powerful. Even if you use the military's power, you won't be able to do anything to him. But I can. Zhu Hongguo's pupils suddenly shrunk after seeing the green book. Only at this moment did he truly realize how terrifying Tan Xiu was. To be able to become a special existence in the National Security Department, he was definitely not only excellent in medical skills, but also very good in doing business. Perhaps, he was also very powerful in martial arts. Li Gongda didn't know Tan Xiu, but the green book made him instinctively respect him. Upon seeing that Zhu Hongguo knew Tan Xiu, he asked, Director Zhu, do you know each other? Captain Li, do you still remember the Divine Dr. Tang I told you about before? He's the one who saved nearly 100 lives in the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Ga's villa complex, said Zhu Hongguo. He's the one in front of us. It's just that I didn't expect that Divine Dr. Tang is also a national citizen. Li Gongda suddenly understood and said with deep veneration, thank you for coming here, Divine Dr. Tang. We're currently looking for the criminal information you want, but the scope has been gradually narrowing down. If our judgment is correct, he should be lurking in the Dongqing district. Dongqing district? Then let's go look for him first. Tan Xiu nodded and said, remember to inform me promptly if you find the exact location of his hiding place in advance. There's something I need to tell you, Divine Dr. Tang, said Zhu Hongguo. Before you came here, the higher-ups also sent 2 people from your department. They are now in Qinglin County and are looking for the whereabouts of the murderer everywhere. Who are they? Tan Xiu was surprised. One is called Electro Lady, and the other is Aqua Babe, said Zhu Hongguo. A strange expression appeared on Tan Xiu's face as he couldn't help laughing and said, it turns out to be them. It seems that these murders in Qinglin County have alarmed the higher-ups. Alright, I got it. We'll take our leave first if there's nothing else. Dongqing District. Electro Lady and Aqua Babe stood on the roof of a 10-story residential building, quietly observing the surrounding situation with binoculars. They had received information from the Public Security Bureau that the murderer was likely to be hiding here, so they decided to wait for the murderer to expose his tracks. Hee, it seems that there are a lot of people interested in this old man. Dao Master Poison appeared behind the 2 women out of thin air. He didn't immediately attack, but let out a strange smile as he observed the 2 women. There was a bit of lust in his eyes, as if he could strip off the 2 women's clothes with his eyes. Electro Lady and Aqua Babe's complexion drastically changed. They quickly turned around and were ready to fight. However, when they saw Dao Master Poison standing less than 10 meters away from them, the 2 women's hearts kept sinking. A powerful enemy. He's very terrifying. I'm afraid it'll be very difficult for the 2 of us to defeat him. The 2 women quickly exchanged glances and silently nodded after understanding each other's thoughts. Electro Lady took a step forward and coldly stared at Dao Master Poison, saying, you're not an ordinary person. Why do you keep killing and creating panic in ordinary society? Do you dare to violate the national will of China? The national will? Dao Master Poison sneered. What a big joke. This old man may have lived in China for hundreds of years, but I've never set foot in China for the latter half of my life. If it weren't for my 2 good-for-nothing disciples who came here, do you really think I'd want to come here? I don't care what your reason is, but I'll give you 2 choices now, said Electro Lady. First, surrender at once. Second, leave China and never set foot in China's territory again. Tao Master Poison raised his hand to touch his chin and let out a strange smile. You want to threaten this old man with just 2 little babies? Ha ha ha, actually. I won't hurt you even if you threaten me. As long as you obediently serve this old man well, I can forgive those little guys from Qingqing Monastery. However, this old man must find and kill that bastard brat who I severely injured and killed my 2 disciples. A cold light burst out from Electro Lady's eyes as she angrily shouted, Old geezer, don't think you can do whatever you want here just because you're strong. The power controlled by the state is not something you can handle alone. You're overestimating yourself. Tao Master Poison shook his head and instantly bombarded Electro Lady with his dragon head crutch. Boom! A flying sword instantly appeared in front of Electro Lady. Sparks splashed in all directions as the dragon head crutch was instantly crushed. Tao Master Poison was forced to retreat several steps in succession before he could barely stabilize his figure. In front of Electro Lady. Clad in white, the handsome and unrestrained Light looked at Tao Master Poison with a faint smile and said, Those 2 may be overestimating themselves, but what if I join you? Tao Master Poison's face turned gloomy as he shouted, Who the hell are you? You're not qualified to know who I am, said Light with a smile. What you do know is that there's only one ending for you today, and that's to perish your soul. Chapter 836. Disdain was written all over Tao Master Poison's face, but a bit of greed flickered in his eyes as he stared at the flying sword in Light's hand. He had a discerning eye, and he'd once followed his master when he was young, and he'd seen the scene of a powerful cultivator controlling a sword to fly. Unfortunately, his master didn't have any inherited method to refine a flying sword, let alone a flying sword technique. He had been annoyed countless times that he didn't even have a flying sword magic tool despite being a cultivator. Brat, it's useless to talk big. Tao Master Poison reluctantly moved his eyes away from the flying sword and gently flicked his finger. Light, who had been vigilantly observing Tao Master Poison, was keenly aware of Tao Master Poison's flicking finger. He immediately retreated to the middle of Electro Lady and Aqua Babe. As the flying sword hovered in the air, he grabbed the 2 women's shoulders with both hands and instantly stepped on the flying sword, flying toward Qingqing Mountain in the north. Wanna run? Tao Master Poison didn't expect Light to be so powerful that he could discover that he secretly released poisonous gas. As his ghostly figure instantly chased after him, Tao Master Poison was aghast to find that the guy in front of him could ride a flying sword very fast. Even though he was carrying 2 living people, his speed was still comparable to his limit. What a treasure! Tao Master Poison's greed grew more intense and he burst out with his fastest speed in hot pursuit. In just a dozen breaths, he had already chased out of the county and reached the top of the mountain on the outermost periphery of Qingqing Mountain. At the entrance of Qinglin County's Public Security Bureau. Tan Xiu suddenly looked up and his sharp eyes stared at the northeast sky. He clearly saw a few lightning-fast figures flying toward the north. It's Light with Electro Lady and Aqua Babe, and Tao Master Poison is chasing them. Tan Xiu clenched his fists and handed the invisibility talismans to the trio. He then grabbed Wang Rui's shoulder and instantly soared into the sky, rushing in that direction. At the top of the mountain on the periphery of Qingqing Mountain, Light smilingly put down Electro Lady and Aqua Babe, whose faces had drastically changed. Aqua Babe was fine and didn't lower her vigilance. She instantly pulled a few meters away from Light and flipped her hand to grab a dagger. Electro Lady, on the other hand, stood blankly next to Light, looking at his handsome appearance with an intoxicated look in her eyes. Beauty, wake up. Light patted Electro Lady's beautiful face with interest and said with a smile yet not a smile. Ah. As if awakened from a dream, Electro Lady realized her love-struck appearance just now, and her beautiful face immediately flushed red. She staggered 2 steps back and then shyly touched the corner of her clothes. Tao Master Poison landed more than 10 meters away from the trio and took out a pair of black gloves from his bosom and quickly put them on. The speed of Light was too fast. Even though he was confident in his own strength, he had no choice but to be cautious. Kid, Hand over the flying sword and I can spare your life. Light said with a faint smile, Old man, you're quite fast in catching up. I didn't expect you to also be at the gold core stage, and at the middle stage of the gold core stage. No wonder my Grand Master was seriously injured by your poison when he was slightly careless. I admit that I might not be able to defeat you in a one-on-one fight, but I'm not the only one who wants to deal with you. If I'm not wrong, Grand Master should be arriving soon. Grand Master? Dao Master Poison's expression changed and he asked with a bewildered expression, who's your Grand Master? Light shook his head and smilingly said, it seems you've lived for a long time and your IQ has deteriorated greatly. Not long ago, you poisoned my Grand Master in Qingqing Monastery and even took the opportunity to sneak attack and injure him. Am I right? Dao Master Poison's pupils shrunk and he fiercely shouted, that young man is your Grand Master. Are you kidding me? His strength is at most on par with yours. How could he be your Grand Master? Whoosh! 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 Several figures instantly appeared in front of Dao Master Poison. Tan Xiu put down Wang Rui. His eyes flickered as he coldly snorted and said, why can't I be his Grand Master if my strength is on par with his? It's really you. But you've obviously been poisoned and severely injured by me. How come now? Dao Master Poison was surprised. How come you look as if nothing happened to you now? Tan Xiu sneered. Hee, how can I be someone's Grand Master if I don't even have the means to force out the poison and heal myself? But you, Dao Master Poison, you actually dare to stay in Qingqing Mountain after provoking me. Do you really think you're invincible here? Dao Master Poison secretly became vigilant. Through his observation, he found that 2 of the 3 people brought by Tan Xiu should be cultivators, but their strength should be very weak, whereas the other one seemed to be an ordinary person who had practiced some fancy but impractical martial arts. However, he was facing 2 powerful enemies at the Golden Core stage. One of them had a very strong magical power, while the other had a flying sword magic tool. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to gain much of an advantage if they were to fight. Poison. Dao Master Poison's most powerful killing move was the use of poison. Facing 2 powerful enemies in front of him, he instantly grabbed a jade gourd from his waist and pulled out the cork, causing 2 pitch-black poisonous wasps to fly out from inside. The 2 wasps didn't directly attack Tan Xiu and the others, but sprayed out 2 clouds of black mist. With a solemn expression, Tan Xiu flicked a poison-dispelling pill in front of Light and the other toward the cliff tens of meters away. Then, he shouted in a deep voice, take this pill. Light swallowed the poison-dispelling pill without hesitation and respectfully said, Grand Master, since this disciple has arrived, why don't you let me deal with this old poison? I believe it will only take a few minutes at most to make him die without a burial place. Don't take him lightly, said Tan Xiu indifferently. Understood. Light looked happy and a jade flute instantly appeared in his hand. The flying sword hovered around him and a melodious flute melody floated out of the jade flute. A surprised look flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes. Listening to Light's flute melody, a smile appeared on his handsome face. He didn't expect that Gu Yan would actually teach the floating sound sword melody to Light. It must be noted that he was the one who created the floating sound sword melody and passed it to Gu Yan, when she was still a teenager. Dao Master Poison violently retreated and stood in the air. Disbelief filled his eyes as he shouted in a deep voice, my wasp venom has no effect on you. I forgot to tell you something. Tan Xiu sneered. I wasted some time to refine a lot of poison-dispelling pills because you plotted and poisoned me in the Qingqing Monastery. Unless your wasp venom can kill a nascent soul stage expert, it won't have any effect on us. Poison-dispelling pill. Dao Master Poison's body trembled and the vigilance on his face turned thicker. He was an expert in using poison, and even cultivators at the Golden Core stage like him were afraid of his poison. However, he was also most worried about encountering powerful people with poison-dispelling pills. What should I do? Dao Master Poison began to consider whether to fight or flee. However, Light didn't give him much time to think. Along with the flute melody, the flying sword hovering around him was like a soldier receiving the command of its commander. It transformed into layers of overlapping sword images that blotted out the sky and rushed toward Tao Master Poison. The imperial sword art could be controlled with spiritual sense. However, the floating sound sword melody had higher requirements. Along with the rhythm, the flying sword seemed to transform into thousands of soldiers and horses that strangled the enemy in a special formation. This is. Tao Master Poison's heart turned cold and he violently retreated backward. Even though his cultivation was a level higher than Light's, he didn't dare to confront such an attack head-on. However, at this moment, layers of ripples suddenly appeared in the void tens of meters behind him. Huh! Tao Master Poison focused most of his attention on the front. Although he noticed the fluctuations in the air behind him, it only gave rise to a trace of doubt. However, being cautious by nature, he still dodged to the side as he retreated. Just this time, a flying sword appeared in the air and pierced through his chest, allowing him to avoid being stabbed in the heart. Damn it! Never in his wildest dreams did Tao Master Poison imagine that there was someone in this world who could hide their body in the air. The moment the abruptly appearing flying sword pierced his body, he saw a phantom suddenly appear and control the flying sword to unleash a swift and fierce attack. One-eyed dragon, get out here and save me! Tao Master Poison was scared because the black-robed phantom controlled the flying sword and sealed off all his escape routes after he was hit by this move. The overwhelming sword images in front of him also arrived in front of him. He was well aware that he would probably meet the Grim Reaper if no one came to his rescue. What a sinister pair of kids! In the nearby mountain forest, a figure flashed lightning fast and fiercely slashed out with a bronze axe. The flying sword and the bronze axe, controlled by the flute melody, collided. To Tan Xiu's and Light's surprise, the flying sword didn't smash the bronze axe. Instead, under the tremendous force, the overlapping sword images dissipated and the flying sword itself flew backward toward Light. Puff! 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 The black-robed dart controlled the flying sword and left more than a dozen bloody wounds on Tao Master Poison's body. Then, she dashed toward the mountain forest below and disappeared in nearly half a second into the dense thicket below. Tan Xiu looked at the old man who saved Tao Master Poison's life. The old man's white hair was draped over his shoulders, and he wore a gray Chinese tunic suit. One of his eyes was tied with a belt, and he was really a one-eyed blind man. You're with him. One-eyed dragon let out a hollow laugh and sighed. Sure enough, the new generation really surpasses the old, and the new generation is stronger than the previous one. This old man really admires you kids. But who's with this old poison? This old man just followed this old poison to collect his debt, but I didn't expect to run into this mess. Old geezer, I'm very curious as to what kind of debt this Tao Master Poison owes you for you to risk your life to save him. Tan Xiu sneered. Today's matter is already a dead end. You rashly barged in, so you can't just stay out of it. One-eyed dragon couldn't help laughing and said, don't be so arrogant, kiddo. This old man may not be your match, but you can't stop me if I want to escape. Even I don't think there are more than 5 people in this world who can stop me. Chapter 837. One-eyed dragon was full of confidence, and his arrogance couldn't help but be revealed in his speech and behavior. There was even a bit of contempt and ridicule in his eyes when he looked at Tan Xiu. Are you sure? Asked Tan Xiu with a faint smile. Of course I'm sure. One-eyed dragon proudly replied, there are only a handful of people in this world who can stop me, but you're definitely not one of them. It's useless if you only know how to talk big, kid. If you really have the means, why would you wait for me to appear? Tan Xiu gently raised his hand and 8 array discs appeared in his hand out of thin air. His figure flashed and his figure flickered again and again. The moment he tossed the 8 array discs into the air, his arms danced and his fingers drew array patterns in the air. In just a few seconds, he had successfully set up the 8-division dragon trap array. With the input of his transcendence energy, the array was completely activated. Tang Xiu returned to his original spot and grinned while stroking his chin with his fingers. Well, I want to see how you're going to escape. 10 minutes. That should be enough, right? If you can break this array in 10 minutes, I'll spare your life, old blind man. But if you can't break it and escape in 10 minutes, then don't blame me for being ruthless. I'll scatter your souls and make you unable to reincarnate forever. An array. One-Eyed Dragon and the Scarred Dao Master Poison exchanged glances. The pores all over their bodies stood on end at this moment. They might be cultivators, but it could be said that they knew nothing about arrays. Alchemy. The two of them could barely understand a bit, but the pills they refined were very ordinary. However, they were completely clueless when it came to weapon refinement and array formations, which were skills that cultivators should have mastered. Even the cultivators they had known for hundreds of years had never heard of any of them who knew how to refine artifacts, let alone arrays with such magical effects. You, who the hell are you? One-Eyed Dragon, who was trapped in the array, shouted with a pale complexion through the array's energy shield. Tan Xiu indifferently said, if you want to know who I am, then break my temporary array formation if you have the ability. Of course, even if you break this array formation, something more interesting will happen later. In short, you will be miserable today, extremely miserable. Finished. He no longer paid attention to them and turned to look at Electrolady and Aquababe, who were dumbfounded, and said with a faint smile, I trust you two have been well since we last met, right? Aquababe's lips squirmed and she forced a smile. We wouldn't have needed to rush here if we knew you were here, Mr. Tang. Moreover, we didn't know that they were cultivators before we were sent here, and their strength was so terrifying. Come to think of it, you've saved us again. Speaking of which, we're also colleagues, so it's natural for us to help each other. Tan Xiu lightly smiled. However, leave the matters here to me. If the two of you have other matters to attend to, you may leave first. We can't go back immediately before dealing with them, Mr. Tang, said Aquababe hesitantly. Also, I know you don't like trouble. After we deal with the two of them, we'll deal with the aftermath. All right. Tan Xiu nodded. Electrolady was in a daze the moment Tan Xiu appeared. Never did she expect that Tan Xiu would appear here, nor did she expect that Tan Xiu would be acquainted with that super handsome guy who made her heart beat faster. She sobered up. With a complicated expression, Electrolady pointed at Light and asked, Mr. Tang, is he, your grand disciple? Tan Xiu glanced at the handsome and elegant Light in white and smilingly said, that's right. According to seniority, he's indeed my grand disciple. What's wrong? You've taken a fancy to this grand disciple of mine? Electrolady's pretty face blushed, but she still replied with all seriousness, you must be joking, Mr. Tang. But he's indeed very good, and I like him very much. If you can facilitate our relationship, Mr. Tang, you'll be my benefactor in the future. Ha ha ha, Tan Xiu burst into laughter, while Light was at a loss whether to cry or laugh as he kept shaking his head. Tan Xiu chuckled and said, everyone loves beauty, and this grand disciple of mine is indeed very good. However, you still need to solve the matters between men and women, so I won't meddle in it. Ah, Light. You've messed up this beauty's heart, so you must comfort her well and don't hurt her. Ha ha ha. Hee hee, ripples appeared in the air a few meters away from Tan Xiu. Dark, who was clad in a black robe with her flowing black hair, appeared. She approached Tan Xiu in a gentle manner and pulled Tan Xiu's arm, saying with a charming smile, Grand Master, my big brother really should get married and have children. He definitely won't dare to disobey you as a matchmaker. Dark. Light angrily shouted. Tan Xiu glanced at the masked Dark in surprise. He shook his head and couldn't help but chuckle. I do want to be a matchmaker for your big brother, but who knows what kind of woman he likes. You, on the other hand, can't always hide in the dark and live in the future. Men and women should get married, so you can tell me secretly if you have someone you like. Dark's eyes froze and immediately rebuked, what nonsense are you talking about, Grand Master? I won't marry unless someone is as great as you, Grand Master. Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing and said, "There aren't many men as great as me. I'm afraid I'm a rarity even in the immortal world. You're asking for too much. Just lower it a bit." Ha ha ha. Pfft, Dark couldn't help but burst into laughter. Her figure flickered and disappeared in the air. North of Qinglin County. On the roof of a 10-story building, Li Gongda and Zhu Honghua stood side by side with binoculars, watching the sky above Qingqing Mountain in the distance. The two of them could clearly see the dazzling golden energy shield. They could even see Tang Xiu and the others on the hilltop. "I never believed in ghosts and gods before, Captain Li. But now I do. Immortals and gods really exist in this world." Zhu Honghua sighed with a forced smile. Li Gongda nodded and said, "I once knew that there are ability users in this world, but these people are very terrifying and belong to a special department that specializes in handling special cases in the country. But I didn't expect that there are people who are more powerful than ability users. If my guess is correct, they are the legendary cultivators who pursue the ethereal and illusory realm of becoming immortals and seeking the Tao." "That's just a rumor. How can there be such people in this world?" Zhu Honghua was surprised. Li Gongda put down the binoculars and pointed to the mountain in the north. "Words are no proof, but seeing is believing. Don't tell me they can't convince you." Zhu Honghua opened his mouth and immediately nodded with a forced smile. "Yeah, I believe them. We couldn't catch the murderers before, but they turned out to be not ordinary humans, but cultivators with magical means." Li Gongda laughed. "Now that Divine Dr. Tang and the others have taken action, we can finally feel relieved. I believe our superiors won't blame us anymore." "That's right." Zhu Honghua said, "With so many murders in Qinglin County, I realized that I might not be able to keep my job anymore. But who would have thought that things would take a turn for the better and the murderers turned out to be such people? If the superiors know about this, I'm sure they won't give me the title of dereliction of duty anymore." "Don't worry." Li Gongda nodded. "I'm actually very grateful to Divine Dr. Tang. He saved my life before, and now he's caught the criminals," said Zhu Honghua. "If our country can have more immortals and gods like him, I'm afraid it'll be much more peaceful." "Do you worship him?" Li Gongda asked with a smile. "Worship, gratitude, and respect," said Zhu Honghua with a straight face. Ha ha ha, Li Gongda laughed and picked up the binoculars again. On the mountain peak. The 8-sex dragon trap array was constantly absorbing energy from all directions to stabilize the array's operation. Its function was very simple, to trap the enemy. Inside the array, Tao Master Poison and One-Eyed Dragon crazily attacked the energy shield formed by the array, yet they couldn't break it. "One-Eyed Dragon, we can't go on like this. This array can isolate the heaven and earth spiritual energy. We're constantly consuming it, but there's no way to replenish it. If we can't break this array, we'll be exhausted to death here." Tao Master Poison's wounds were no longer bleeding, but his severe injuries made him extremely irritable. "I know what you said, but I can't think of any other way to break this array apart from that," said One-Eyed Dragon bitterly. "You mean, the soul-slaying nail?" Tao Master Poison was startled. The one-eyed man said helplessly, "Yeah." One-Eyed Dragon helplessly said, "That damn thing. I've been sealing it inside my body all these years, trying to subdue it. But it's not willing to be used by me until now. If I force myself to use it, it will no longer be under my control once this array is broken. I'll never be able to use it again." Tao Master Poison was silent for half a minute before he bitterly said, "Just use it. Even if we lose a treasure, it's better than all of us being trapped here. I'll give you that poison dragon if we can escape and go back." "A golden thread snake?" asked One-Eyed Dragon in surprise. "This is a golden thread snake that this old man has been cultivating for 180 years. Tao Master Poison nodded and said, "Although there's no hope for it to transform into a flood dragon in this lifetime, it will probably not be inferior to a flood dragon once it really grows up." One-Eyed Dragon squinted his eyes and asked in a deep voice, "Are you serious?" "Yes, But I'll write off all the debts I owed you before, said Tao Master Poison. No problem. The one-eyed dragon replied with satisfaction. Then, he sat down cross-legged in the air and clasped his hands together before his chest. The moment he separated them, a dense mist slowly formed above his head. A pitch-black nail, half a foot long, with countless strange runes engraved on it, appeared within the mist. Break! One-eyed dragon floated up and fiercely waved his arms, manipulating the soul-slaying nail to bombard the golden energy shield. Following a series of cracking sounds, a layer of cracks appeared on the golden energy shield, spreading like a spider web. In just a few seconds, the formation was completely broken, and the 8 formation discs exploded in their positions. Buzz! The pitch-black soul-slaying nail suddenly burst out with a surging aura and instantly broke away from One-Eyed Dragon's control. Chapter 838. Tan Xiu's eyes lit up the moment the soul-slaying spike appeared. He didn't care even if the 8-division dragon trap array was broken. His figure flickered lightning fast and chased after the soul-slaying spike. At the same time, he cast a series of hand seals and instantly wrapped the soul-slaying spike with surging primal chaos force. Absorb! Tan Xiu stepped on the void and changed his hand seals. The primal chaos force wrapped the struggling soul-slaying spike and abruptly pulled it in front of him. Impossible! What a strong aura! One-Eyed Dragon and Tao Master Poison's complexion drastically changed and horror burst out from their eyes. Their bodies stiffened in midair as though they were cast with a body-freezing spell. Tan Xiu didn't even look at them. He bit his finger and a drop of blood instantly fused into the soul-slaying spike. In almost the blink of an eye, the struggling soul-slaying spike was absorbed into Tan Xiu's body. Light, Tao Master Poison, I'll leave this one-eyed dragon to you. With a bit of excitement, Tan Xiu's eyes finally fell on One-Eyed Dragon and Tao Master Poison. As his figure flickered and appeared in front of them, he instantly unleashed the divine sword. 100-meter-long sword beam streaked across the sky and engulfed the two in an instant. Block it! One-Eyed Dragon screamed. His surging true essence force condensed into a saber and fiercely slashed at the sword beam. At the same time, he released his golden core. The dazzling golden core burst out a dazzling brilliance and bombarded the sword beam along with the saber beam formed from true essence. Tao Master Poison roared and pulled out a broken black flag from his bosom. As he crazily instilled his true essence, the palm-sized black flag rapidly expanded and wrapped him in it in the blink of an eye. In front of his other hand, a dark green light ball instantly condensed and was thrown toward the sword beam. Boom, 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 the divine sword was unstoppable. With irresistible force, it smashed the saber beam condensed from true essence, split the ping-pong ball-sized golden core, split the dark green light ball, and finally bombarded One-Eyed Dragon and Tao Master Poison. Puff, arg, One-Eyed Dragon spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Even his ears, eyes, and nostrils were overflowing with blood. His entire body seemed to have been struck by lightning, and his spirit quickly became dispirited. His body flew backward for nearly 100 meters, and he barely managed to control his true chi to dash in front of the golden core that had been sent flying. He could clearly see that the golden core, which was originally glowing brightly, was now covered with dense cracks, as if it could completely shatter at any time. Return. The golden core, which had become dim and lusterless, was swallowed back into the One-Eyed Dragon's mouth. Compared to One-Eyed Dragon, Tao Master Poison appeared to be in a much more miserable state. The dark green light ball he threw was split and scattered, the black flag wrapped around his body was torn apart, and the sword beam left a bloody wound of more than 10 centimeters long on his body. One could even clearly see several broken bones and indistinct internal organs in the wound. Myriad swords returned to origin. Tan Xiu licked his lips and controlled the divine sword to transform into countless sword images that blotted out the sky and pressed down on One-Eyed Dragon. Dozens of sword images even shot toward One-Eyed Dragon's surroundings in a roundabout manner, blocking all possible escape routes for One-Eyed Dragon. One-Eyed Dragon was scared out of his wits. At this moment, he clearly realized that the long sword was absolutely a terrifying divine weapon. Even a magic tool couldn't possibly burst out with such power. He regretted that he didn't immediately escape when Tan Xiu took away the soul-slaying spike. "Spare my life and I'll be loyal to you for 100 years. At the moment of life and death crisis, One-Eyed Dragon shouted loudly. Disdain flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes and he proudly shouted, "I have enough subordinates. You're just an old geezer who already has half a foot in hell's door. I don't want you." While speaking, his fingers moved and the lightning attraction art was cast. Lightning bolts as thick as an arm fell from the sky, shuttling through the gaps of the sword images and bombarding One-Eyed Dragon. Thousands of arrows pierced his heart and lightning bolts struck his body. One-Eyed Dragon let out a miserable howl as his body turned into a charred sieve. Just as the cracked golden core shot into the distance, a beam of light shot out from the divine sword and accurately hit the golden core, thoroughly splitting it into several pieces. On the other side, the white-robed light controlled the flying sword and continuously launched attacks at Dao Master Poison. Although his cultivation was not as high as Dao Master Poison's and was only at the early stage of Golden Core, Dao Master Poison was severely injured and could only unleash 60% of his strength, so he was already tottering under Light's fierce attacks. Puff! Although Dao Master Poison knew that there was another ruthless dark hiding in the dark, he was already on the verge of collapsing in the face of Light's fierce attacks. He clearly sensed that someone was sneaking up on him from behind, but he still couldn't separate his body to block it. He didn't even have the chance to dodge and was pierced by the flying sword from the back. Light's attacks came to a halt, but Dark, who had revealed herself, was still attacking frantically. The flying sword tore Dao Master Poison's body and picked up his golden core from his body. However, just as she was about to grab the golden core, two poisonous wasps suddenly appeared and shot toward Dark's neck from the left and right. Danger! Dark was an expert in sneak attacks and assassinations, but she realized that she couldn't avoid the sudden appearance of these two poisonous wasps. Just as she controlled the flying sword to block the left side of her neck, the poisonous wasp on the right side was already less than half a meter away from her. Puff! A dazzling light flashed and the poisonous wasp that was about to bite the right side of Dark's neck was suddenly pierced by a silver needle, narrowly avoiding Dark's neck. Dark looked at Tan Xiu with lingering fear. She then grabbed the golden core and appeared in front of Tan Xiu lightning fast. She then gratefully said, "Thank you for saving me, Grand Master." Dao Master Poison is an expert at the mid-stage of Golden Core, after all. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "It's not surprising that he has a few things with terrifying lethality. Be more careful in the future. Even if it's an unremarkable nobody, he or she can release a terrifying killing move that can make you fail miserably. The path of a cultivator is full of ups and downs and crises. You can only overcome all obstacles and always be vigilant to live longer, go further, and become stronger. Will sincerely follow Grand Master's teachings." Light and Dark cupped their fists at the same time. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and suddenly said, "I'll bestow upon you the surname Tang from now on. Are you willing to accept it?" Bestow a surname? Light and Dark exchanged glances and nodded silently. They then knelt in front of Tan Xiu and kowtowed 3 times to express their gratitude to Tan Xiu. "Since you've accepted it, then untie the troublesome thread that's been troubling you," said Tan Xiu. "It's up to you whether you choose to recognize each other or choose to sever your bloodline." "Understood." Hesitation appeared on the faces of the siblings. Tan Xiu shot them a deep look. Then, he suddenly turned around and said with his back facing them, "Do you want to hear a story?" Light and Dark, namely Tang Guang and Tangan, who had been bestowed the surname Tang, nodded and said, "Please tell us, Grand Master." Tan Xiu said, "I once met such a person. He came from a prestigious sect and was favored by tens of thousands of people. It could be said that he was an existence envied by countless people. But one day, he seemed to have changed into a different person. He was no longer a silk pants who grew up with a golden spoon in his mouth. Instead, he became diligent and hardworking. He had parents, relatives, and friends, yet he felt very lonely and even painful at times. It was because he missed his real family on a blue planet in the distant starry sky, the mother who had endured all kinds of hardships to raise him. Tang Guang and Tang An exchanged glances. After listening to the story, they immediately realized who Tan Xiu was talking about. It was because the Grand Master in front of them was the only one in line with the protagonist of the story. Tan Xiu continued, he returned to Earth and was no longer a supreme in the immortal world, but he was very satisfied. Without strength, he was willing to start all over again. Without a prominent identity, he could still strive to achieve something. But that unforgettable familial love was something worth cherishing. You two siblings should be aware of who I'm talking about. Tang Guang and Tang An nodded. The story I told you is just the beginning, Tan Xiu said. But after I returned to Earth, I uncovered some mysteries that had been puzzling me for a long time, such as my father and the relatives of my father. That is, the Tang family in the imperial capital. Tang Guang and Tang An shuddered at the same time. They already knew some things about their Grand Master, Tan Xiu, and they also understood what he wanted to say at this moment. They realized that perhaps their parents had given them to their master not only for the sake of obtaining the cultivation technique, but also because they hoped that they could follow their master and become immortals. After a long time, Tang An took off her mask, revealing her stunning beauty that could topple a nation. The complicated expression in her eyes was gradually replaced by a firm light as she said, Grand Master, we siblings are surnamed Tang, and our mother is surnamed Gu. I'm grateful to the one who gave birth to me. I'm grateful to the one who abandoned me. And understands that it's good to have more familial love, but there's no loss if we can't get it. I know what to do, Grand Master. Let's go see them, Grand Master, said Tang Guang faintly. Go. Tan Xiu nodded. Even cultivators and immortals have 7 emotions and 6 desires. Only by tempering one's heart in the tumultuous world of mortals can one's mind be as solid as an impregnable fortress. Understood. Tang Guang and Tang An exchanged glances and the duo instantly flew toward Qinglin County. When Tan Xiu landed on the ground again, he saw Wang Rui grabbing a dagger and fiercely cutting Dao Master Poison's body. Even though the body had been cut into dozens of pieces, he didn't have the slightest intention to stop. The hatred in his heart seemed to be constantly released by the cutting. Tan Xiu secretly shook his head. He then looked at Electrolady and Aquababe and said, You've completed your mission. Go back to where you came from. Say hello to Duanmu Lin if you see him. Understood. Aquababe cupped her fists. Electrolady, on the other hand, looked a bit absent-minded and perfunctorily cupped her fists. Her eyes glanced at the direction where light disappeared and then hesitantly asked, Can you tell me where I can see light in the future, Tan Xiu? You're really reluctant to part with light? Tan Xiu was surprised. Chapter 839. Tan Xiu's impression of Electrolady was that she was a fickle woman who only paid attention to a man's appearance and never paid attention to his inner qualities. Tan Xiu never had a favorable impression of such a woman. On the other hand, Tan Xiu had a good impression of Aquababe. If she had taken a liking to Tang Guang, Tan Xiu might have played matchmaker. But as for Electrolady, Tan Xiu was too lazy to take care of this ill-fated relationship for Tang Guang. Forget it. You're not suitable for each other. Tan Xiu took out a cigarette and lit it. After taking a few puffs, he turned around and left. He didn't want to hear the answer even if he asked. Electrolady strode to catch up and angrily asked, What do you mean? Why do you say we're not suitable? I'm an ability user and he's a cultivator. Isn't this a perfect match for each other? Tan Xiu halted his pace and said with a faint smile, Do you think ability users can be compared with cultivators? Do you think you're a good match? That's right. Electrolady nodded heavily. Ability users do have some power, indeed. Tan Xiu shook his head and contemptuously said, Powerful ability users can even be compared with some cultivators. But how long can an ability user live? 100 years. 200 years. Do you know how long a cultivator can live if his or her cultivation is ceaselessly growing stronger? What does it have to do with how long they can live? Electro-Lady angrily retorted. Besides, there was once a super powerhouse who lived for 200 to 300 years among our ability users. Unfortunately, it was during the anti-Japanese war and I had no chance to meet him. It has nothing to do with age. Tan Xiu sneered. If Tang Guang cultivates according to my guidance and his cultivation keeps progressing, he can live for at least 1,000 years. If he works hard and is lucky, he can even become an immortal in the future. By that time, it's possible for him to live for thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years. But what about you? Even if you become a super powerhouse among ability users, you can only live for 200 to 300 years at most. Do you want Tang Guang to be alone on the path of cultivation after you die? This, even though Electro-Lady wasn't a cultivator, she had heard some rumors about cultivators. It seemed that cultivators with great strength could indeed live for a long time. However, the moment she saw Tang Guang, she was indeed moved. She even found the feeling of her first love. She had never experienced love at first sight before, even though the number of times she had been in love had already exceeded 3 digits. But it was different now. The first time she saw Tang Guang, her heart had been touched, and that kind of emotion burst out uncontrollably. Looking at Tan Xiu's disdainful expression, Electro-Lady realized the gap between her and Tang Guang, but she was really unwilling to give up. After hesitating for a moment, she seriously said, "Mr. Tang, can you teach me how to cultivate? As long as I become a cultivator, I can accompany Tang Guang for a long time." Tan Xiu rolled his eyes and snappily said, "Do you think you can become a cultivator just by talking? What kind of joke was this? In our world of cultivation, there is a saying, Tao cannot be imparted lightly. Who the hell do you think you are? You want me to teach you a cultivation technique? What qualifications do you have?" Having said that, Tan Xiu was too lazy to pay attention to Electro-Lady. He strode to Wang Rui, who had finished venting his anger, and said, "Your enemy is dead and the crisis of Qingqing Monastery has been lifted. I've done what I promised you, so consider it as repaying your favor. Let's meet again if fate wills it." Wang Rui stared at Tan Xiu with a blood-stained face. His lips squirmed a few times before he suddenly asked, "If I were to cultivate according to the cultivation technique you taught us, would it be possible for me to have such a strong power like yours now?" Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "There's no hope for you to achieve it in your lifetime if you don't have any other opportunities. Qingqing Monastery is just a martial arts inheritance, and I can make you 10 or 20 times stronger than before. It's already a favor for you." Wang Rui looked disappointed. After a moment of silence, he said, "What price do I have to pay for you to teach me a cultivation technique, Tan Xiu? Do I have to sell my life to you?" Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "You're not the kind of person who submits to others, and I don't need you to sell your life to me. Tao cannot be imparted lightly. Even if I teach some people a cultivation technique, I'll still have to weigh the other party's situation. If Qingqing Monastery hadn't suffered this calamity and your father hadn't been killed by Tao Master poison, you might have had the chance to step into the path of cultivation. But now, it's not suitable." "Why not?" asked Wang Rui in a deep voice. "You have too much hostility in your heart. Even if I bring you to the threshold of cultivation, you won't be able to achieve much in the future," said Tan Xiu. "The higher your cultivation, the greater the chance of you suffering a cultivation deviation. It's very easy for you to fall into the demonic path and never be able to recover." "I understand." Wang Rui shot a deep look at Tan Xiu. Although he said that he had given up, he was more determined to become a cultivator and become a powerful expert like Tan Xiu in the future. Since Electro-Lady and Aqua Babe were there to deal with the aftermath of the battle, Tan Xiu was too lazy to care about it. After leaving with Jin Shi and the others, he directly went to the cave by the mountain stream where Mo Ao and Zhang Xinyue were staying. His purpose in coming to Qingqing Mountain this time was to get the red silk flower. However, even though his goal had been achieved, he still didn't want to leave immediately. It was the blood-seizing pill. He must refine it as soon as possible to make a breakthrough in his cultivation as soon as possible. Otherwise, if he were to encounter another Golden Core Realm cultivator in the future, he might fail miserably. Are we leaving, Tan Xiu? Zhang Xinyue's mood was very complicated. She was somewhat reluctant to part with Tan Xiu, but she also didn't want to stay in this godforsaken Qingqing mountain anymore. She didn't realize that Tan Xiu had taken root in her heart after getting along with him for many days and the matter of their marriage. I still need to stay here for some time, about a week. Tan Xiu shook his head. If you don't want to stay here, I can send someone to send you back to demonic capital. It's been so many days, I'm sure your big sister is very worried about your safety. Zhang Xinyue hesitated for a moment and then made a decision. Since you still need a week, then I won't go back first. Staying in the metropolis all year round and constantly working hard for my studies and career is actually quite tiring. I've made up my mind. For the next week, I'll stay in Qingqing Mountain to enjoy the scenery and relax. Since you've made up your mind, then I'll tell Ao and the others to protect you. You can go sightseeing wherever you want. Tan Xiu nodded. Why are you so good to me? Asked Zhang Xinyue all of a sudden. Do you want to make up for what you owe me? Ugh, Tan Xiu opened his mouth but didn't know how to answer. To be honest, he did have the idea to make up for what he owed Zhang Xinyue, but it might be unfair to a woman if he were to say it out loud. Zhang Xinyue's expression turned dark, but a smile immediately appeared on her face as she said, forget it. You don't have to answer since you don't want to. Whether you want to make up for what you owe me or fall in love with this young lady, we'll forget everything that happened here 7 days later and return to our respective lives. Tan Xiu fell into silence. Zhang Xinyue said it casually, but could he really forget everything that happened just like that? The thread of love was something that couldn't be cut and sorted out. Tan Xiu had always been a free and easy person. Since he couldn't sort it out, he didn't want to continue to be entangled in it. He firmly believed that there would always be a way out when the time came, so he would just take it one step at a time. He no longer thought about the issue between men and women and finally calmed down his mind to begin concocting the blood-seizing pill. The trip to Qingqing Mountain this time was definitely a huge harvest for him. Not to mention the red silk flower, even the large number of medicinal herbs in the underground warehouse of Qingqing Monastery was an important cultivation resource for him. There was also the soul-slaying nail. Thinking about the soul-slaying nail, Tan Xiu resisted the urge to use it immediately and used the demon god spirit devourer cauldron to begin concocting the pill. Since the other medicinal herbs had been prepared, Tan Xiu's process of concocting the pill was very slow, but the process was also very smooth. On the 4th day, along with the sounds of banging coming from the demon god spirit devourer cauldron, Tan Xiu threw the last precious medicinal herb, the red silk flower, into the cauldron. He cast his alchemy art and the pill took shape. The moment the demon god spirit devourer cauldron's lid was opened, the entire cave was filled with a rich medicinal fragrance. Zhang Xinyue, who had been staying in the cave for 4 consecutive days and had never gone out to play, felt her spirit shake. The sweat pores all over her body stretched out as she was immersed in the rich medicinal fragrance. So comfortable. Zhang Xinyue stared at the demon god spirit devourer cauldron in a daze. Her throat even squirmed a few times subconsciously as she swallowed the saliva secreted from her mouth. Absorb. Tan Xiu pinched the absorb symbol and extracted a peanut-sized, crimson blood-seizing pill and immediately swallowed it. Ah Wu, no one is allowed to enter the cave without my order. Tan Xiu shouted and quickly stored the demon god spirit devourer cauldron into his interspatial ring. Then, he sat cross-legged on the spot and began to frantically digest the surging medicinal efficacy of the blood-seizing pill. After Tan Xiu swallowed the blood-seizing pill, the erupting flood tide flooded every corner of Tan Xiu's body. The blood-colored flood tide surged ceaselessly, cleansing his muscles and tempering his bones. Even his internal organs were scoured over and over again to increase their flexibility and firmness. The surging blood in Tan Xiu's blood vessels was gradually wrapped by the red medicinal efficacy and solidified. As time went by, the amount of blood in his blood vessels became less and less. On the third day after he took the blood-seizing pill, the amount of blood in his blood vessels was only a quarter of the original amount. However, even if it was only a quarter of the original amount, it didn't affect Tan Xiu in the slightest. Even his originally bright red blood seemed to be illuminated by a layer of golden brilliance at the moment, exuding a hazy golden red light. Hungry. The moment Tan Xiu opened his eyes, a strong sense of hunger made him feel particularly uncomfortable. Under Zhang Xinyue's curious gaze, he quickly took out a lot of food and wolfed it down. For 2 whole hours. Tan Xiu's mouth didn't stop. While eating and drinking, he extracted the scarce energy that nourished his blood and qi and replenished it into his blood vessels. Chapter 840. Zhang Xinyue, who sat across Tang Xiu, was dumbfounded and tongue-tied as she watched him constantly conjure food out of thin air and stuff it into his mouth as though he was the reincarnation of a starving ghost. She roughly estimated that Tang Xiu had eaten at least hundreds of kilograms of food in his stomach for 2 hours. This is the appetite of a whale. Zhang Xinyue finally noticed that Tang Xiu no longer conjured food, but a bottle of wine and gulped it down. She was previously afraid that Tan Xiu would eat too much, but now it seemed that her worries were groundless. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly saw Tan Xiu yell, "Oh, go catch some wild beasts and barbecue them for me. I can eat hundreds of kilograms of barbecued meat." Plop, Zhang Xinyue fell on the edge of the bed. When Tan Xiu stood up and came to her with a confused face, she covered her forehead and sat up again. She was at a loss whether she had to cry or laugh as she said, "Even reincarnated hungry ghosts don't have such an appetite like yours, right? You've been eating for 2 hours and hundreds of kilograms of food, yet you can still eat hundreds of kilograms?" Tan Xiu suddenly realized that his crazy eating and drinking had scared Zhang Xinyue, yet he still felt hungry. If it weren't for the food stored in his interspatial ring that he had eaten in advance, he would probably not have been able to stop eating until now. However, using food to replenish his blood and qi was the best way for him at present. After all, the blood in his blood vessels had been reduced by 3/4. He was afraid that he would become weak if he didn't eat more to replenish his blood and qi. We cultivators can't be treated with common sense. The ancient people once said that you can eat a cow when you're hungry. It's not a lie, nor is it an exaggeration for those special people. I've consumed too much in the past few days, so food is the best way to replenish my qi and qi, said Tan Xiu with a light smile. Even if your consumption is a bit big, you shouldn't have eaten so much. Zhang Xinyue said, "That's hundreds of kilograms of food. I wonder how your stomach can hold it. Even if your digestive system is very good and the food is directly digested, I don't see you going to the toilet, do you?" Cough, cough. Tan Xiu was defeated by Zhang Xinyue's words. If he could absorb 99.9% of the nutrients in the food, the remaining 0.1% of the waste wouldn't be enough for him to go to the toilet, right? Perhaps, after eating a few hundred kilograms of food, he would need to go to the bathroom. However, wouldn't it be too awkward to explain such a question? Tan Xiu shook his head and said with a hollow laugh, "Let's not talk about this topic anymore. In short, you know that we cultivators can't be looked at with the eyes of a normal person. Later, when all and the others are done roasting the game, you can also eat some." Zhang Xinyue nodded and suddenly said, "Tan Xiu, can I have a taste of the medicinal pills you concocted before? These past few days, just smelling the fragrance of the pill made me feel especially energetic. Also, I couldn't move the bed at all before, but the day before yesterday, I dropped my phone under it, so I subconsciously moved the bed. I didn't expect it to move so easily. This means that my strength has increased." Tan Xiu chuckled and said, "The smell of the panacea is indeed very good for ordinary people. Under a subtle influence, it can change your physique. However, I can't give you the medicinal pills I concocted before, else I won't be helping you, but harming you instead. Why do you say that? Asked Zhang Xinyue with a puzzled expression. You're not a cultivator, so the huge medicinal efficacy will make your body explode if you take it rashly, said Tan Xiu. Zhang Xinyue's heart turned cold and she immediately stopped talking about taking the medicinal pills. She twisted her body and changed the topic. When are we leaving this place? I haven't taken a bath for several days, and I've broken the record of not taking a bath since I was a child. We'll leave this place immediately after I'm full, said Tan Xiu with a smile. We'll take a rest in Qinglin County first. All right. Zhang Xinyue looked pleasantly surprised. Didn't you say that you want to go sightseeing in Qingqing Mountain before? Asked Tan Xiu suddenly. I haven't seen you go out for a week, have you? Ah, Zhang Xinyue blushed and let out a dry smile. I'm afraid that you'll get into trouble if I leave you here alone, so I didn't go sightseeing. These days. She kept thinking about it and finally realized that she was just like her elder sister. She didn't know when she had fallen in love with him. Of course, she didn't deny that it had something to do with her first time being taken away by him. But liking him was liking him. Even if she didn't want to, she still couldn't extricate herself from it. However, she also thought over and over again that this trip was just a dreamlike love experience. After she left Qingqing Mountain, she would immediately cut off any contact with him and cut off all the feelings she had for him. Late at night, Tan Xiu took Zhang Xinyue, Ao, and the others back to Qinglin County. The entire county was quiet. Pedestrians and vehicles would occasionally pass by even at night. But now, they had rushed to the Sunbao 5-star hotel in Qinglin County, yet they didn't encounter a single pedestrian or car. Why do I feel like something's wrong, Tan Xiu? This situation isn't normal. The moment Zhang Xinyue stepped into the hotel's entrance, she subconsciously turned her head to look at the empty night outside. Maybe it's the recent murder cases that have been popping up one after another that scared the people of Qinglin County. Tan Xiu forced a wry smile. Besides, it's already midnight now, so it's normal for there to be no one outside. Zhang Xinyue reluctantly accepted Tan Xiu's answer. Welcome, how many rooms do you need? Inside the hotel lobby's bar counter, 4 on-duty staff looked at them at the same time. 2 of them subconsciously looked at the rest area on the left, where 4 security guards specially arranged by the hotel were on duty. 2 presidential suites, please, said Tan Xiu. The 4 female cashiers looked surprised and observed Tan Xiu a few times. Suddenly, one of them asked, Are you the young divine Dr. Tan Xiu? You look a bit familiar to me. Since when did I become so famous? Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing. How come no one knows me when I stayed in this hotel before? It's really you. The female cashier was pleasantly surprised. That's great. I finally got to see the face of this great god. My uncle was almost poisoned in the Golden Goblet Emperor Ga's villa complex not long ago. I heard from him that he was lucky to have you here and escape from the disaster. You're my uncle's savior, divine Dr. Tang, as well as the savior of my entire family. Thank you. Thank you so much. Ugh. You're welcome. It's a doctor's duty to save people, said Tan Xiu with a smile. A few minutes later, under the enthusiastic greeting of the 4 female cashiers, they finally completed the check-in procedures and successfully entered the presidential suite. What made Tan Xiu speechless was that Zhang Xinyue insisted on staying in the presidential suite with him and even chose a side room. What's your next plan, boss? Asked Mo, who stayed alone in the presidential suite's hall. After Tan Xiu finished washing up and came out, he immediately asked. Tan Xiu pondered for a moment and slowly said, I'll return to Shanghai first and then go to the Longquan Bay and Kanas in the west. It's time to explore the immortal trove that has never been opened. It seems like it won't be long before your university's exam, boss. Mo nodded. When you were concocting pills a few days ago, your teacher in charge called you, and I picked it up. Exam? Tan Xiu stared blankly and a wry smile appeared on his handsome face. Come to think of it, he had been studying at Shanghai University for almost a year, but the total time he had spent in school was probably less than 2 months. As for the content in the textbooks, he had almost finished all the freshman courses, but his attendance rate was really low. I gotta find a way to get the green light from the teachers of those subjects after I go back. Else, even if I can pass the exam, I won't have enough credits, which will affect my graduation certificate in the future. Tan Xiu lit up a cigarette and pondered silently. As a matter of fact, the diploma didn't matter to him at all. But his mother was very much looking forward to him getting a diploma from a famous university. It left him with no other choice but to force a smile. Of course. His mother wouldn't blame him if he really didn't want to continue his studies. After all, his current achievements were not necessarily the same even if he had a diploma from the world's top universities. However, his mother would surely be disappointed if he didn't have a diploma from a top university. "Oh, go back and rest. We'll rush back to Shanghai early tomorrow morning," said Tan Xiu as he waved his hand and looked up at the sparse twinkling stars in the dark sky outside the window. 10 minutes later. Zhang Xinyue came out of the room while wiping her wet long hair. Her eyes couldn't help but turn soft when she saw Tan Xiu sitting alone on the sofa, drinking beer and looking out the window. "Are you thinking about something?" Tan Xiu turned his head and looked at Zhang Xinyue's slender and curvy figure, as well as her face that was almost identical to Zhang Xinyue's. He then said with a smile, "Just thinking about something." Zhang Xinyue let out a faint smile and picked up the unopened beer on the coffee table. After opening it and drinking 2 mouthfuls, she smilingly said, "Tell me about it." "You won't understand what I'm thinking about even if I tell you." Tan Xiu shook his head. "However, there's something I want to talk to you about." Zhang Xinyue's expression slightly changed. She hesitated for more than 10 seconds before slowly saying, "Can we not talk about it? There are some things that must be solved." Tan Xiu shook his head. "No matter what you think, I want to tell you that I can't give you the feelings between a man and a woman since I already owe you a lot of emotional debt. However, since that incident happened due to a freak combination of factors, I can't let you suffer any grievances. I won't promise you money since I don't want to treat it as a transaction. However, I can promise you a life without worries in order to make up for what I owe you." "A life without worries?" Zhang Xinyue let out a self-deprecating smile. She then stood up and walked to the window. With her back facing Tan Xiu, she said, "What kind of a life without worries?" Chapter 841. Tan Xiu got up and came to Zhang Xinyue's side. He took out a jade bottle and handed it to her, saying, "There's a drop of body refining liquid inside. Drop it into the hot water when you take a bath later. It can improve your physique, and you'll know the benefits after you've used it. Keep in mind that the process may be a bit painful, but you'd better persist for more than half an hour." Shortly after, Tan Xiu took out a pen and paper and quickly wrote down a cultivation technique. It was not a cultivation technique from the immortal world, but one of the many cultivation techniques he obtained in Changxi last time. This is the pure ice art, a cultivation technique suitable for women to practice. I've drawn the meridians and acupoints of the human body and marked the circulation route of the cultivation technique. You can practice according to it, but it's up to you to see how far you can go in the future. Holding the jade bottle and the cultivation technique, Zhang Xinyue stared at Tan Xiu and asked, "Is this what you said to guarantee me a lifetime of worry-free life?" Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "You can contact me at any time if you're short of money or need help in other aspects in the future. If you can't contact me, you can go to the magnificent Tang Corporation to find Kang Xia or Shanghai's Paradise Manor to find Ouyang Lulu. Of course, you can also look for the Everlasting Feast Hall anywhere in the country. Starting today, every person in charge of the Everlasting Feast Hall's branch will know your name. Also, I'll personally refine an amulet after I return to Shanghai and send someone to give it to you. It can protect your safety as long as you carry it with you at all times. However, the number of times I can refine an amulet is limited with my current cultivation, so it can only protect you 3 times at most. It won't hurt you even if you encounter a car accident, fall from tens of meters high, or if someone shoots at you. Also, Zhang Xinyue raised her hand to interrupt Tan Xiu and shook her head. Forget about the rest. It's more than enough. But can you give me 2 amulets? 2. Tan Xiu stared blankly for a moment. He immediately realized that Zhang Xinyue wanted 2 amulets, and one of them was probably for her older sister, Zhang Xinya. After nodding, he said, "No problem, I'll give you 2. Zhang Xinyue turned around and gently put the cultivation technique and the jade bottle on the tea table. Then, she returned to the front of Tan Xiu. With a bit of gentleness in her eyes, she softly said, "Since we're going to part ways after returning to Shanghai and completely forget what happened in Qingqing Mountain, please fulfill my wish." "What wish?" Tan Xiu asked. Zhang Xinyue opened her arms and gently hugged Tan Xiu, saying, "Be my boyfriend for half a day from now until we set off in the morning." To be honest, I've had feelings for a few guys since I was young, but I've never really been in a relationship. Tan Xiu understood what she meant, but his face revealed a bit of awkwardness. Feeling Zhang Xinyue's delicate body in his arms, who was only wearing pajamas, he opened his arms, but he really couldn't hug her anymore. What happened last time was just an accident. Even when he had sex with Zhang Xinyue, he didn't feel anything at all. He simply couldn't remember the situation at that time. My last wish. Zhang Xinyue could feel Tan Xiu's stiff body. Her forehead was propped on Tan Xiu's chin, and her face was attached to Tan Xiu's neck and chest as she faintly said. Tan Xiu sighed inwardly. As his body relaxed, he gently hugged her and said, "Go back to your room and rest early. We still have to continue our journey tomorrow." That night, Tan Xiu didn't return to his room, but sat on the bed where Zhang Xinyue was resting, watching her fall into a sweet dream until she woke up at 9 in the morning. In the evening, not long after a passenger plane landed at Shanghai Airport, Tan Xiu, Zhang Xinyue, and the rest appeared at the airport's exit. Tan Xiu. After stepping out of the airport, Zhang Xinyue's pace came to a halt. "What's wrong?" asked Tan Xiu. Zhang Xinyue took a deep breath and said with all seriousness, "I hope you can remember our agreement. Let's forget what happened in Qingqing Mountain from now on. If possible, it's best if we don't meet again for the rest of our lives." "All right." Tan Xiu pondered for a moment before he nodded. Zhang Xinyue's mood was very depressed, but she was well aware that her elder sister loved Tan Xiu more. She was doomed to never have any chance to be with Tan Xiu in this life. "Then, let's part ways here." "I'll send someone to send you back," said Tan Xiu. "No need. I'll take a taxi back." Zhang Xinyue shook her head. Tan Xiu hesitated for a moment before he nodded and said, "All right, then. I'll send someone to send the car and the amulet to you when Jin Shi drives your car back from Qinglin County." At the airport's exit, a complicated expression surged in Tan Xiu's eyes as he watched Zhang Xinyue turn around and leave. He didn't see Zhang Xinyue turn around and walk forward. She had only taken a few steps when tears welled up in her beautiful eyes and slid down her delicate cheeks. "Let's go. Let's go back." More than an hour later, Tan Xiu returned to Blue Star Villa complex. The home he had been away from for a long time was no different from before. The 2 nannies were very conscientious and took good care of the house. He didn't tell anyone in advance about his return this time, so no one disturbed him. Since it was Sunday, he stayed at home for the next 2 days and refined 10 amulets using fine jades. 2 of them were sent to Zhang Xinyue's shop by Jin Shi and the car. Monday. The first ray of sunlight rose from the east in the morning. Tan Xiu stepped out of the house and walked to the campus. He found that it was still early, so he bought breakfast in the cafeteria and brought it to the dormitory. Based on his understanding of Yukai's group, they should have just gotten up from the bed at this time. "Knock, Knock. As he came to the dormitory's door, Tan Xiu knocked on it and found that the door was unlocked. There was no other sound except for snoring inside. After pushing the door and entering, he saw Yu Kai, Hu Qingsong, and Xue Chao still lying on the bed and snoring. Did they drink last night? Tan Xiu glanced at the many bottles casually discarded on the floor and the cabinet with a strange expression. It was reasonable to say that Yu Kai and Hu Qingsong were lazy, but Xue Chao was a diligent child. How could he fire? Carrying the breakfast, Tan Xiu let out a roar as a smile climbed up his face. What? Fire? Where's the fire? Hu Qingsong suddenly sat up from the bed. He didn't even see Tan Xiu clearly and hurriedly went down the bed ladder. Yu Kai was no better than him. He desperately lifted the quilt and made a posture to get out of bed. Huh? Big bro Tang. Xue Chao, on the other hand, calmly sat up. The sleepiness on his face instantly disappeared after seeing Tan Xiu. The three of you are sleeping soundly. Tan Xiu said with a smile. Did something good happen to you? You must have drunk a lot of wine last night. Fuck, bitch. Hu Qingsong and Yu Kai realized that they were fooled by Tan Xiu and immediately scolded him with a smile. It had been a long time since they last saw each other. After the few of them laughed and joked around for a while, Tang Xiu learned from them why they drank so much wine. It turned out that Hu Qingsong had taken a fancy to a girl, but she was snatched away by a handsome, rich guy with good academic performance. Old Hu, there are millions of girls in the world. Why do you have to be unrequited in love with one flower? How about this? I'll introduce you to a better one some other day, Tan Xiu said with a smile. It's not that I'm unhappy because that girl was chased away by that guy, said Hu Qingsong with a forced smile. It's mainly because that bastard is too arrogant. Relying on the fact that he's richer than me, he acts as if he has a lot of money. Big bro Tang, you don't know this, but that guy is a bastard. He's famous for being a womanizer at school, and he even hooks up with a lot of women outside of school. At the end of last year, that brat was stopped outside the school and violently beaten up. That guy's ability is not small, huh? Tan Xiu was surprised. To think that he even has his hands outside of school. Yu Kai patted Hu Qingsong's shoulder and let out a hollow laugh. Big bro Tang, that guy's background is not small. Rumor has it that he's the son of a rich man in Haiqing province. To be honest, my family does have some money, but the gap between us and him is too big. Do you know how the girl that old Hu took a fancy to was chased away by that guy? I don't know what method that guy used, but he got a helicopter and landed it in an open space behind our school. Then, he showed her roses and all kinds of gifts. That scene. Tan Xiu was rendered speechless and said, it's no fun to chase after a girl who likes material things. Don't worry, old Hu. Don't give up the whole forest for a tree. I've been chasing that girl for half a year, but I didn't even get to touch her hand, said Hu Qingsong helplessly. Forget it, you don't need to comfort me. I won't bother with them as long as that Miao brat doesn't act arrogantly in front of me. Surnamed Miao. Haiqing province. Is that guy the son of the Miao group's big boss in Haiqing province? Tan Xiu was surprised. No, but I heard that the Miao group's big boss is his uncle. Hu Qingsong shook his head. Ah, it turns out that he's Miao Wentang's nephew. Tan Xiu laughed. No wonder he's so arrogant. Miao Wentang is indeed rich and powerful. Alright, let's not talk about this anymore. Hurry up and wash up. I've brought you breakfast. We'll go to class after you're done eating. Big bro Tang, there's no class this morning. Yu Kai's eyes widened. What? Tan Xiu was stunned. He hadn't come to school for a long time, so he didn't expect that the schedule would change. After letting out a hollow laugh, Tan Xiu helplessly said, let's go out for a stroll since there's no class. I haven't been back to school for a long time, so I feel that this place has become unfamiliar. We can't sleep anyway, so how about listening to some songs? Yu Kai suddenly said. Great idea. Agreed. Hu Qingsong and Xue Chao nodded at the same time. Listening to songs? Tan Xiu was puzzled. Where are we going to listen to them? Yu Kai chuckled and said, haha, our teacher in charge is amazing now, big bro. Forget it. Words are no proof. You'll know when you come with us. The teacher in charge? Han Qinggu. Full of confusion, Tan Xiu waited until the three of them wolfed down their food and drank to their heart's content before the group of four quickly left the dormitory. Chapter 842. Full of confusion, Tan Xiu followed Yu Kai and the others out of Shanghai University. It didn't take long for them to turn into a small path and wander around for a while before they finally stopped in front of a high-walled courtyard. This is... Tan Xiu looked up at the plaque on the door with a surprised expression on his face. It was the Demonic Sound Workshop. 3 big golden characters were written on the door plaque in bold calligraphy and looked majestic. It's your first time here, right, Big Bro Tang? Yu Kai chuckled and said, this is the place where many of the country's heavyweight musicians have gone to further their studies. Those famous singers regard this place as a holy land. Whoever is lucky enough to study here for a period of time will become famous in the entertainment circle. Don't keep us guessing. Get to the point, said Tan Xiu. There's an old man in the Demonic Sound Workshop. It's said that he has been living here for decades and has never left this door, said Yu Kai. But his fame is like a thunderclap in the ears of countless heavyweight musicians. Even some foreign music masters often come to visit him. This old man is proficient in music and is good at dozens of musical instruments. His attainments in music seem to have reached an unparalleled level. What does this have to do with Teacher Han? Asked Tan Xiu. Maybe it wouldn't have anything to do with her if it was a month ago, said Yu Kai with a smile. But since that old man announced something a month ago, it suddenly caused a stir in the music circle all over the world. He said that he will worship an English teacher from Shanghai University, Han Qinggu, as his master. What? Tan Xiu's expression slightly changed. As far as he knew, Han Qinggu didn't know anything about music. But Xue Qingqing in his previous life was proficient in music and had extremely high attainments in this aspect. Could it be? Tan Xiu took a deep breath and asked in a deep voice, is Han Qinggu here? Teacher Han comes here every Monday morning to teach that old man. Yu Kai nodded. We looked for her about half a month ago and learned about this matter from her. Big Bro Tang, you didn't expect it, did you? Our teacher Han is actually a music master. Hu Qingsong suddenly frowned and said, that's not right. If I remember correctly, eldest brother Tang is also proficient in music. By the way, eldest brother Tang, you were a student of class Han in high school. I still remember that you performed at our freshman welcoming party. Don't tell me you learned your music skills from teacher Han in high school. No. Tan Xiu replied indifferently and went straight to the closed door. He pushed the door open and walked in. He wanted to meet Han Qinggu and ask her how she suddenly became proficient in music. In the courtyard, a white-haired but spirited old man in a white tunic suit was sitting under a patch of bamboo, flipping through music scores. Noticing that someone had come in, he slowly raised his head, his face revealing a displeased expression. Why are you here again? Yu Kai quickly took out half a pack of Chunghwa cigarettes from his pocket, took one out and handed it over. He then grinned and said, Elder Chu, didn't you say before that you're quite interested in this God's nectar? We're here to bring you some wine. God's nectar? Where is it? The old man's spirit was shaken and the displeased expression on his face immediately vanished. Yu Kai pointed to Tan Xiu and smilingly said, I'll introduce you to a great expert. This brother next to me is Tan Xiu, the magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss. His company produces God's nectar. You can get it from him if you want to drink God's nectar every day. The old man carefully observed Tan Xiu a few times and then slowly got up. Under the gazes of Yu Kai, Hu Qingsong, and Xue Chao, he came to Tan Xiu's front. He clasped his hands together and bowed, saying, "This old man, Chu Jia, greets divine Dr. Tang." Elder Chu, Tan Xiu didn't understand why the old man bowed to him, but he still politely returned the greeting. The old man smiled and said, "I've long heard of divine Dr. Tang's great name. But it's a pity that this old man has sworn an oath that I'll never step out of this courtyard for the rest of my life, so I've never had the chance to meet divine Dr. Tang. It's really an honor for my humble abode to have you here today." "Elder Chu, I'm actually looking for Han Qinggu this time," said Tan Xiu. The old man stared blankly for a moment. He looked at Yu Kai and the others and suddenly said, "I just remembered that you're still teacher's student now." At this moment, a beautiful figure appeared at the circular archway inside. It was Han Qinggu, who was wearing a plain dress. Upon seeing Tan Xiu, a happy expression flashed in her eyes. She immediately came over and said, "You're back, Tan Xiu. I thought you didn't even want to participate in the final exam of freshman year. Shall we have a private talk?" asked Tan Xiu. Han Qinggu's heart tightened, but her expression didn't change as she said, "About what?" "Just a private talk," said Tan Xiu. Han Qinggu was silent for a moment before she nodded and said, "Come with me." At the side, Yu Kai, Hu Qingsong, and Xue Chao raised their thumbs up and looked at Tan Xiu with eyes full of admiration. They had long known that Tan Xiu's luck in love affairs was exuberant, but they didn't expect that his methods were so powerful that he even proposed to have a private talk with Teacher Han in front of them. "He's worthy of being our big bro Tang. Even Teacher Han is captivated by his charm. I won't have to drag you to accompany me to drown my sorrows in wine if I can learn even 10% of big bro Tang's methods in picking up girls." Chu Jia was a shrewd old man. He was keenly aware that the relationship between Tan Xiu and Han Qinggu was unusual. Upon hearing the exclamations from Yu Kai and the other two, he immediately scolded them with a smile, "You stinking brats, don't talk nonsense. Miss Han is also your teacher, so you must remember to respect her." "We're not talking nonsense, Elder Chu," said Hu Qingsong with a grin. "Our teacher Han really likes big bro Tang, a fact that many of us know. Besides, respecting one's teacher is indeed a must, but this is a new era where teachers and students fall in love and even get married. This kind of thing is very normal." Chu Jia shook his head and forced a wry smile. He was not an old-fashioned traditional man, nor was he an old-fashioned feudal man. He naturally knew some things about the trend of the current era. Although he didn't agree with many ideas, there was nothing he could do to change it. Behind the arched door was another courtyard. On the left side of the courtyard was a row of spacious rooms. Han Qinggu opened one of the doors and led Tan Xiu inside. She personally brewed a cup of tea and handed it to him, saying, "What do you want to talk to me about? Don't you want to explain it to me?" Tan Xiu's eyes were like torches. "I don't know what to explain to you." Han Qinggu shook her head. "Should I address you as Miss Han Qinggu now?" Tan Xiu sneered. "Or should I address you as Xue Qingcheng?" Han Qinggu's body trembled and her complexion instantly turned a bit pale. Her eyes that originally looked at Tan Xiu also turned a bit evasive. "Judging from your look, you should remember everything, right?" asked Tan Xiu coldly. Han Qinggu nodded, but then shook her head and bitterly said, "I remember a lot of things, but there are still many things that I can't remember. Even now, I still can't associate the Xue Qingcheng you mentioned with me." "What did you remember?" asked Tan Xiu in a deep voice. Han Qinggu pointed to the row of musical instruments in the room and said, "I saw a lot of pictures, some of which were me using musical instruments, so I suddenly realized that I'm very good at music and dance. Also, I seem to have seen a brand new world, which is called the immortal world. In the past, I didn't understand why I suddenly possessed such great power, and why a cultivation technique would appear in my mind, but now I seem to understand. There is a woman called Xue Qingcheng, and part of her memories are in my mind. However, although I've connected a lot of pictures in my mind and figured out a lot of things, there are still many things that I can't figure out and feel familiar with. I want to know how many things related to me you can remember, asked Tan Xiu in a deep voice. I can't see it clearly. Han Qingwu shook her head and forced a smile. There's always a person in my mind, but I can only see his back. I can't see his face. But I guess that man should have something to do with you. A disappointed look flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes, but there was also a hint of relief. He wanted to know the answer. He wanted to know why Xue Qingqing betrayed him in the past. But he was somewhat afraid that he would destroy her after getting the answer. Once, Gu Yan told him a lot of things, including a lot of rumors about Xue Qingqing. But he didn't know whether the rumors were true or false, and he wasn't sure what Xue Qingqing's real purpose was. There was a long silence. Tan Xiu took a deep breath and slowly said, I hope you don't lie to me, because I hate being deceived the most. After saying that, he turned and walked toward the door. Han Qingwu looked at Tan Xiu's back as he left the room. Crystal tears fell from her eyes. It was not until Tan Xiu's back disappeared outside the door that she murmured 3 words. I'm sorry. When Tan Xiu returned to the front yard, he didn't greet Chu Jie. He just told the 3 that he had something to do and left in a hurry. Even when they called him, he didn't respond. He didn't know whether what Han Qingwu said was true or not. But he was sure that even if Han Qingwu hadn't fully recovered her memory, it wouldn't be long before she remembered everything. Hatred. It was still shrouding his heart. He needed to figure out the whole story. He needed to get a reason for her betrayal. Also, why was she reincarnated on Earth? Tan Xiu was in a bad mood and didn't have the intention to go back to campus. After he went straight back to his residence, he called the big boss of Dingshan Media, Gu Changmin. Brother Gu, do you have any acquaintances at Shanghai University? I do. Gu Changmin's reply was neat and tidy. You also know that I'm a freshman at Shanghai University, said Tan Xiu. But I have too many things to do this year, so I've been skipping classes. Therefore, I need your help with 2 things. Do you think it's convenient for you? Brother Tang, let's not be polite with each other. Just tell me what you need. I have a very deep relationship with Vice President Li of Shanghai University, said Gu Changmin with a smile. Chapter 843. As the saying went, having connections in the court made things easier. Gu Changmin was a well-known rich man in Shanghai, and his network was naturally very strong. With just a short phone call, he had solved the matter that Tan Xiu had requested. In fact, Tan Xiu's request was very simple. He hoped that the university would give him the green light to smoothly graduate from the university and get a diploma from Shanghai University. As for the issue of attending classes, he would attend classes if he had time. Brother Tang, I don't quite understand. Just as Tan Xiu was about to hang up the phone, Gu Changmin's voice came out of the phone again. What don't you understand? Asked Tan Xiu. Brother Tang, given your status and fame, Shanghai University won't make things difficult for you. Even if you put forward some special requests, I'm afraid they'll agree to it, said Gu Changmin. You've affected the reputation of Shanghai University, and your existence has even made Shanghai University shine in the education world. Is that so? Tan Xiu thought about it and suddenly understood. As the saying went, the onlookers see the game more clearly than the players. He had actually ignored his own identity and simply regarded himself as an ordinary university student at Shanghai University. But after thinking about it, he realized the root of the problem. It was Han Qingwu. He had been attending classes for a year. The number of times he attended classes was very few. Whether it was the professional or elective courses, the teachers had never troubled him. Even the university leaders turned a blind eye to it. But every time, it was Han Qingwu who made a fuss and scared him. This woman, Tan Xiu, was amused and annoyed at the same time. After hanging up the phone, his depressed mood eased a lot. He recalled that he hadn't attended classes for a long time, so it was meaningless to go to class again. Thus, he decided not to go to class before the final exam. If he had the time to go to class, he might as well review by himself. The efficiency was definitely not lower than going to class. In the evening, Tan Xiu reviewed the entire professional course content and was about to go downstairs to the dining room for dinner when a beautiful figure appeared outside the study room. "You're back." Mu Weining stopped outside the study room and said with a smile. She wore a business suit, but it outlined her perfect figure. Her long, flowing hair fluttered in the breeze. Tan Xiu smiled and got up. He came to Mu Weining and said, "I just came back for 2 days. I'm very tired after going out this time, so I stayed at home and took a good rest." "But how did you know I was back?" Mu Weining smiled and said, "Jiang Fian told me." "She seems to have heard it from your roommate." Tan Xiu suddenly understood. As he led Mu Weining downstairs, he asked with a smile, "I did go to school today." Apart from Yu Kai and the others, there seems to be no one else who knows that I'm back. "By the way, how's your company doing?" "It's very good," said Mu Weining softly. "The company's scale has expanded several times, but it's still too busy. By the way, Lulu helped me poach a few top advertising designers in the country." "She's really capable." "How did she get involved with you?" asked Tang Xiu, puzzled. "We met at a business gathering and had a good chat," said Mu Weining. "Now, Lulu and I are business partners. I helped her promote the Paradise Club, and she helped me poach a group of business designers." Tan Xiu secretly shook his head. He couldn't figure out what women were thinking. It was like this in the immortal world, and it was still the same now. Whether it was Mu Weining or Ouyang Lulu, they both knew each other's existence and their relationship with him. Yet, they had established a friendship and contact in private. After stepping into the dining room, Mu Weining suddenly stopped. She hesitated and said, "Do you have anything to do tonight, Tan Xiu?" "I'm fine." Tan Xiu shook his head. "Why? Do you have something to do?" "There's an important charity party tonight, and I'm lacking a male companion," said Mu Weining. "How about you go with me?" "Charity party?" Tan Xiu stared blankly for a moment before he couldn't help laughing and said, "So you came here because you want me to go with you to the charity party? I say, you really know how to do hard labor." A trace of shyness appeared on Mu Weining's face as she said, "I came here because I missed you too much. I didn't plan to attend the charity party tonight, but seeing that you have nothing to do, No need to explain." Tan Xiu said with a smile, "Shall we eat something before we go? Or do we go now?" Mu Weining thought for a moment and said, "Let's eat something first." At the Century Hotel in Shanghai, luxury cars constantly stopped at the hotel's entrance as well-dressed men and women got off and entered the hotel, heading straight to the 18th floor where the charity party was held. It was nearly 7 o'clock when Tan Xiu and Mu Weining arrived. On the way, Tan Xiu learned that tonight's charity party was hosted by a famous businessman in Shanghai, Zhang Qingfeng. He was the chairman of the Zhang Group and was also a well-known philanthropist in the country. It was rumored. Every year, Zhang Qingfeng donated more than 9 figures to charity. At the entrance of the banquet hall on the 18th floor, several security guards in black suits were quietly checking the authenticity of the invitations, while a young and beautiful woman was greeting the guests to sign their names on the sign-in book. Then, she said to the guests with extraordinary bearings, "I'm sorry, but you don't have an invitation. We can't let you in. Young lady, please make an exception." The old man in the lead wore a smile on his face as his sharp eyes swept around. The woman shook her head and said, "I'm very sorry. I'm just following the rules. If you don't have an invitation, you really can't go in. Else, I'm afraid I'll lose my job if our leader blames me. You're making things difficult for me." As soon as Tan Xiu came to the entrance, he saw a familiar figure. His brows unconsciously furrowed, but then immediately relaxed. He walked over and said with a smile, "Since they don't have an invitation, we can't let them in." There are too many people who want to fish in troubled waters these days. You can't give such people a chance. In an instant, everyone at the entrance looked at Tan Xiao and Mu Weining. A middle-aged man standing behind the old man turned his head and glanced at Tan Xiao and Mu Weining. Despite being stunned by Mu Weining's peerless appearance, he still couldn't help but shout, "Don't talk nonsense, brat. You know who we are, enough." The old man raised his hand to interrupt the middle-aged man. A smile outlined on the corner of his mouth as he smilingly scolded, "You stinking brat, are you deliberately making fun of this old man? Freeloading food and drinks. Do I look like the kind of person who freeloads for free? I've been too tired recently. I often do things that are strenuous and don't bring me any benefits," said Tan Xiao with a smile. "My eyes are so tired. It turns out to be Senior Duanmu. You're an old man who has to deal with a myriad of issues every day, worrying about the country and the people. How come you come here? Could it be?" Duanmu Lin couldn't help laughing, but he still nodded slightly and said, "Don't waste time. Did you bring an invitation? Just take us in." Tan Xiao's heart skipped a beat. He nodded and said, "All right, then come with us." From the beginning to the end, Tan Xiao didn't introduce Duanmu Lin to Mu Weining. Although Duanmu Lin gave Mu Weining a meaningful look, he didn't take the initiative to talk to him. After entering the hall, Tan Xiao came to Duanmu Lin's side and asked in a low voice, "What happened? Why did you come here in person?" "Bloodkin," said Duanmu Lin in a low voice. Tan Xiao stared blankly and asked in surprise, "Isn't our country a forbidden place for the Bloodkin? Where did the Bloodkin come from? How could they be so reckless?" Duanmu Lin said, "A riot broke out in the European Blood Clan's stronghold. A small vampire clan that had been keeping a low profile for hundreds of years suddenly swept through the other clans with an overwhelming momentum. They intimidated and caused a huge massacre. Some vampire clans belonged to the Stygian Club, but the ones who joined the Stygian Club were the most miserable ones. It can be said that most of them were massacred. A small vampire clan that has been keeping a low profile for hundreds of years?" asked Tan Xiao, confused. "Are you sure it's a small clan?" Duanmu Lin nodded and said, "It's indeed a small clan according to the previous intelligence. I thought that the number of vampires in that clan was less than 20. But now it's clear that the vampire clan has at least 200 clansmen, and most of them are terrifyingly powerful. The most important thing is that this clan has a powerhouse, a vampire overlord." Hiss, Tan Xiao couldn't help but gasp. Had it been in the past, he could poke a large number of vampire overlords to death with just a finger. But with his current strength, he would still need to expend a lot of effort to kill a vampire overlord even though his cultivation had just made a breakthrough. Did some vampires escape here from the Blood Clan's turmoil in Europe? No, it's the people from that clan. Duanmu Lin shook his head. Tan Xiao stared blankly and asked with a puzzled expression, "The vampires from that clan? What are they doing in our country? Could it be that they want to stir up trouble in our country?" "How would I know?" Duanmu Lin shook his head and forced a smile. "We just received the news and rushed over here. If we can't drive them away, I'm afraid we can only kill them." Tan Xiao nodded. He wouldn't have poked his nose into other people's business if he hadn't encountered them. In any case, Duanmu Lin and the other ability users were here. But since he had encountered them, he wouldn't stand idly by if those vampires dared to disturb the order and harm ordinary people. "Do as you wish. You can contact me at any time if you need my help." Duanmu Lin nodded with satisfaction and said, "Go to the imperial capital if you have time later. Our department has a reward system. We already know what you've done in Qingqing Mountain, so you need to collect your reward in person." "What kind of reward?" Tan Xiao, who was about to leave with Mu Weining, suddenly stopped and asked. "Allow me to keep it a secret for now," said Duanmu Lin with a smile. "In short, it's definitely a pleasant surprise for you." Tan Xiao pursed his lips and snorted inwardly, "It's fine as long as it's not a shock." Chapter 844. As Duan Mulin and the others left, Tan Xiu took Mu Weining to the leisure area in the corner of the banquet hall. He casually found a sofa and sat down. His eyes swept over the well-dressed men and women in groups of 3s and 5s. He shook his head and sighed, "To be honest, I really don't like this kind of occasion. A bunch of people wearing masks and hypocritically talking about some meaningless things is simply a waste of time. People living in the secular world must do as the Romans do." Mu Weining chuckled. Although this charity party is very cliché and everyone is wearing a hypocritical mask, it's not like there's nothing to recommend it. China attaches great importance to networking, and this is a good place to network. Do you see those men and women who are about the same age as us, chatting and laughing together? They are the typical second generation or third generation nouveau riche. This time, their elders brought them here to let the young people get to know each other. In the future, they will form their social circle. It can also be considered as another way to cultivate their children. What you said makes sense. Tan Xiu nodded. Actually, I don't like this kind of occasion either. Mu Weining chuckled. It's just that the Zhang Group is my client, and Zhang Qingfeng sent me an invitation, so I came to support. Your advertising company has business dealings with the Zhang Group? Tan Xiu was surprised. Mu Weining shot a deep look at Tan Xiu and said, "You introduced so many businesses to me back then, causing my advertising company to become famous in Shanghai. Most of the businesses were introduced to me by those people you introduced at the beginning. Zhang Qingfeng came to me personally, and I learned that it was Zhang Yueming, the boss of the Xinyang Group. Now, the Zhang Group is also a big client of my company." Tan Xiu suddenly understood and said with a smile, "It seems that I have to show off my skills tonight." "You're going to do a charity auction?" Mu Weining was surprised. "You're my girlfriend, so I naturally have to give Zhang Qingfeng some face." Tan Xiu slightly smiled. "Let's not talk about this. I seem to see some big stars on TV." Mu Weining turned her head and immediately saw several famous A-list and B-list stars in the entertainment circle. They wore evening dresses and were accompanied by male or female companions, smiling and chatting with those who were not easy to greet. Time flew by. At 8:00 in the evening, the charity auction began. Everyone went to the round table in the hall and took their seats. Tan Xiu and Mu Weining also found an empty table and sat down. The men and women at the same table didn't know who Tan Xiu and Mu Weining were, but the two of them were handsome and the woman was beautiful, so the middle-aged men and women at the same table immediately cast curious glances at them. You're Tan Xiu, Boss Tang." Suddenly, the middle-aged man sitting opposite Tan Xiu said. Tan Xiu smiled and said, "I am Tan Xiu." The middle-aged man immediately looked pleasantly surprised. He hurriedly got up and took out a business card. He bowed and handed it to Tan Xiu, saying, "Hello, Boss Tang. It's an honor to meet you. I'm Wang Mingwei, the owner of Xiang Home Appliances. Please take care of me in the future." Tan Xiu smiled and said, "I didn't bring my name card. I'm really sorry." The smile on Wang Mingwei's face froze for a moment before returning to normal. Although he was a bit unhappy inside, he still said, "It's all right. It's all right." Tan Xiu took out his mobile and dialed the number on Wang Mingwei's name card. Wang Mingwei stared blankly and looked at Tan Xiu with a puzzled expression. "I don't have the habit of carrying a business card with me," said Tan Xiu with a smile. "But this is my mobile number. If Boss Wang doesn't mind, let's keep in touch in the future." Wang Mingwei immediately realized that he had misunderstood Tan Xiu. A bit of sincerity was revealed in his smile as he nodded and said, Sure. Please don't mind me if I disturb you in the future, Boss Tang." "I won't." Tan Xiu nodded with a smile. He then looked at Mu Weining next to him and said with a smile, "Weining, as my girlfriend, why haven't you greeted Boss Wang?" Mu Weining stared blankly for a moment before she immediately understood Tan Xiu's meaning. She took out her business card and handed it to Wang Mingwei, saying with a smile, "Hello, Boss Wang. I'm Mu Weining." Wang Mingwei glanced at the business card with a slightly surprised expression. He immediately put it away and said with a smile, "Miss Mu is really a proud daughter of heaven. You've established such a big advertising company at such a young age. I'll look for the person in charge of the company's publicity department later and tell him to contact your company more. I hope you'll take care of me in the future." "Certainly," said Mu Weining with a smile. At this moment, several middle-aged men and women sitting at the same table were shocked by Wang Mingwei's words. They were familiar with Wang Mingwei, so they naturally understood his character. However, the meaning behind Wang Mingwei's words was very obvious. Did he want to give his company's advertisement to this outrageously beautiful woman? "Brother Wang, who is this Boss Tang?" The middle-aged man sitting next to Wang Mingwei couldn't help but ask curiously. "Brother Zhu, this is the famous magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss, Tan Xiu. How come you don't know him?" Wang Mingwei said with a smile. "He's the most legendary and favored son of heaven in our business world. The magnificent Tang Corporation? Tan Xiu." In an instant, the faces of the men and women sitting at the same table changed and shock could be seen in their eyes. Their businesses were not very big. The most powerful among them, Wang Mingwei, only had a net worth of a few billion yuan, whereas the rest only had assets of several hundred million yuan. It was already very rare for them to be invited here today. Therefore, they had never seen Tan Xiu in real life even though they knew him. The middle-aged man surnamed Zhu hurriedly took out his business card and smilingly said, "Boss Tang, it's really my fault for not recognizing you immediately. I'm Zhu Tao, the owner of the Golden Bridge Limited Company." "Hello, Boss Tang." "I'm Boss Tang." In just a few minutes, Mu Weining received 4 business cards. What made her at a loss whether she had to cry or laugh was that these 4 obviously wanted to curry favor with Tan Xiu and expressed that they would cooperate with her advertising company in the future. What was this? Attending a charity gala could actually help her attract business? Mu Weining already knew about Tan Xiu's ability, but at this moment, she admired him from the bottom of her heart. At this moment, on the temporary platform in the innermost area, Zhang Qingfeng, the organizer of this charity gala, appeared with a microphone in his hand. He smilingly said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very glad that all of you can spare some time from your busy schedules tonight." Tan Xiu, who was sitting below, observed Zhang Qingfeng. He was young and looked like he was in his early 40s, but he was very spirited and could be regarded as a handsome man. His smile was very gentle, and his words and actions were more sincere than many people. As his speech came to an end, the charity auction began. The items in this charity auction were, in fact, very common. At least, the first 5 items were very common. However, in order to give face to Zhang Qingfeng, many people still bid. The most expensive item was a fragrant fan, which actually reached hundreds of thousands. The next item is a pair of jadeite bracelets. This jadeite bracelet has been handed down for a long time. It was once worn by a very famous superstar in Shanghai during the Republic of China period. The starting price is 100,000 yuan. The bidding begins now. On the projector. The dark green jadeite bracelet was very beautiful, and it immediately attracted many female guests present. Tan Xiu's eyes were sharp. At first glance, he could see that although the quality of this pair of jade bracelets was good, it was not the best. However, in order to support Zhang Qingfeng, he decided to auction it for Mu Weining, 150,000 yuan. 160,000 yuan. 240,000 yuan. The price soared all the way, and soon it rose to 240,000 yuan. Tan Xiu glanced at Mu Weining, who was smiling without saying anything, and then reached out his hand and shouted, 300,000 yuan. Suddenly, pairs of eyes in the living room looked over. More than a dozen of them suddenly showed a look of surprise when they saw Tan Xiu. Because they knew Tan Xiu, and most of them even had a good relationship with Tan Xiu, such as Zhang Yueming, the big boss of Xinyang Group. 400,000 yuan. Just as everyone was sizing up Tang Xiu, a handsome young man sitting in front of a remote table called out. He was sitting with his legs crossed. Tan Xiu looked at him and suddenly smiled. Then, he said again, 1 million yuan. I think my girlfriend will like this pair of jadeite bracelets. The young man's expression changed and he angrily glared at Tan Xiu. When everyone thought that he would not bid again, he loudly said, 2 million yuan. My girlfriend should also like it very much. In an instant, Zhang Yueming and Gu Changmin, who were in the banquet hall, stood up. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Zhang Yueming coldly glared at the young man and said in a deep voice, since Brother Tang's girlfriend likes that jadeite bracelet, then I'll bid 10 million yuan and give it to Brother Tang after the auction. Gu Changmin also indifferently said, if you still want to increase the price, I'll double the amount you bid. The young man obviously knew Zhang Yueming and Gu Changmin. His complexion slightly changed and he immediately shut his mouth. Tan Xiu got up and cupped his fists towards Zhang Yueming and Gu Changmin under the watchful eyes of countless people. He smilingly said, you're too polite, brothers. However, the protagonist tonight is Mr. Zhang, and the purpose is also for charity. Besides, my girlfriend likes that jadeite bracelet, so how can I let you two brothers pay for it? How about this? I bid 20 million yuan for that pair of jadeite bracelets. I wonder if anyone wants to increase the price. The hundreds of guests in the banquet hall immediately burst into an uproar after hearing Tan Xiu's words. Many of them even whispered to each other. Who is he? How can he be so awesome? A pair of jadeite bracelets worth only a few 100,000 yuan, yet he actually threw out 20 million yuan? Who the hell is this tycoon? Even if he's rich, he shouldn't spend it like this, right? It's strange. Zhang Yueming and Gu Changmin are two famous figures in Shanghai. Why would they stand up for him on such an occasion? Isn't this guy too awesome? He's too handsome. His girlfriend is so lucky. He's really crazy. On the platform inside, Zhang Qingfeng never expected that Tan Xiu would personally come tonight. He only sent the invitation to Mu Weining, and he wouldn't have any opinion even if she didn't come. However, not only did she come, but she also brought Tan Xiu with her. Furthermore, Tan Xiu also gave him such a big face. However, for so many big shots to curry favor with him, I think he's definitely not an ordinary person. If only I were that powerful. I would be the role model of my generation. Looks like I have an idol in the future. He's too handsome. His girlfriend is so lucky to have found such a handsome and capable boyfriend. I know that woman. She was once the #1 beauty in the imperial capital, Mu Weining. That brother is really awesome, he actually managed to woo such a fairy. It would be great if he didn't have a girlfriend. In the guest seats, Miao Jinlei clenched his fists tightly and his face was gloomy. He looked at Tan Xiu with jealousy in his eyes. Just now, he did not bid with Tan Xiu for no reason. He had never even seen Tan Xiu before, and there was no grudge between the two of them. He was jealous. Because he had already recognized Mu Weining's identity. She was the most beautiful campus belle of Shanghai whom he had pursued for a period of time, but she did not even look at him. He had also brought a female companion to attend the charity banquet this time. Moreover, she was the prettiest girl in Shanghai University that he had recently chased after. Normally, his girlfriend did look pretty good, but compared to Mu Weining, she paled in comparison. Bastard! At this moment, Miao Jinlei finally recognized Tan Xiu. He was able to study at Shanghai University because his uncle, Miao Wentong, had used a lot of connections and financial resources to let him become a transfer student at Shanghai University. The reason was so that he could make friends with Tan Xiu at Shanghai University. It would be best if he could become a close friend of Tan Xiu. Originally, he had wanted to make friends with Tan Xiu. After all, he knew that Tan Xiu had the Tang family behind him. It would definitely be beneficial to make friends with this kind of young master with a strong background. However, tonight's sudden meeting and conflict made him no longer have any intention of making friends with Tan Xiu. Apart from anger, there was also a strong sense of jealousy in his heart. What are you talking about? Aren't you just relying on the protection of the elders in your family? If not for the Tang family, I'm afraid you would not even be a fart. I really don't understand what uncle is thinking. Why does he want me to make friends with this kind of bastard? There are so many rich and powerful families in Beijing, and there are even more powerful young masters. With the power and wealth of the Miao family in Haiqing province, I'm afraid that no one will be happy to make friends with me, right? Thinking of this, Miao Jinlei suddenly slapped the table, then directly pulled his girlfriend up from the chair, and strode out with a gloomy face. He felt that, as the host, Zhang Qingfeng fawned on Tan Xiu like this, which was equivalent to slapping his own face. Therefore, he felt that there was no need to stay any longer, and there was no need to leave any face for Zhang Qingfeng. Although his uncle had told him to come and support Zhang Qingfeng, he was not willing to serve him anymore. At this moment, Zhang Qingfeng, who had just returned to the stage, instantly had a gloomy expression. His eyes looked at the back of Miao Jinlei and his female companion as they left, and anger rushed to his head. At the same time, in the hall of the charity party, the other guests were keenly aware of Zhang Qingfeng's strangeness. They turned their heads one after another and also saw Miao Jinlei leaving with his female companion. In an instant, whispers sounded again, "Whose family's kid is that? How could he be so stupid?" He directly slapped Zhang Qingfeng's face after suffering a little bit of vexation. I really don't know which family cultivated such a silly boy. Who is the most unhappy with his actions? It's definitely Zhang Qingfeng. And Zhang Yueming and Gu Changmin. He's throwing their faces away. Alas, this young man is really brainless. It doesn't matter if he leaves, but I'm afraid he has offended the three big shots at the same time. I'm afraid it won't be so easy for him to do anything in Shanghai in the future. Remember this. Regardless of whether you know him or not, you must never have any contact with him in the future. This kind of idiot likes to bring calamity to the elders of his family. What an idiot. As Tan Xiu watched Miao Jinlei leave, an arc was outlined on the corner of his mouth. After a smile climbed up his face, he moved closer to Mu Weining and asked, "Do you know that guy?" "I do. He's a student of Shanghai University," said Mu Weining with a chuckle. "He's a guy who relies on his looks and his family's money to flirt with women everywhere." "Don't tell me he chased you?" asked Tan Xiu with a strange expression. "He did, but I just ignored him," said Mu Weining with a faint smile. "You're worthy of being the first campus belle of Shanghai University, the most famous beauty in the entire imperial capital." Tan Xiu smiled and gave a thumbs up. "No matter where you go, you can always meet your former pursuers." "But is that guy's family rich? What does his family do?" Mu Weining was a bit shy. She slightly lowered her head and said, "His family is from Haiqing province. He's the nephew of the Miao Group's big boss, Miao Wentong." "He's Miao Jinlei?" Tan Xiu was surprised. "The rich second generation who recently snatched the goddess in Old Hu's heart. If that's the case, then the female companion he brought just now is. I heard that the goddess who Qingsong has been secretly in love with for a long time was chased away," said Mu Weining with a chuckle. "It seems that he got drunk with Yu Kai and the others yesterday. But I don't know if it was Miao Jinlei who chased her away, nor do I know if it's the girl next to him." Tan Xiu smiled and said, "Whether it's her or not, I have to call Miao Wentong and tell him that this guy is not a good person. It won't be a good thing if the Miao Group is handed over to this guy in the future. I know you have a good relationship with Miao Wentong, but is it useful?" Mu Weining chuckled. "Do you want to listen to it?" Tan Xiu said with a faint smile. "Listen to what?" Mu Weining was confused. "I'll let you listen to a big play later," said Tan Xiu with a mysterious smile. The charity auction continued. Zhang Qingfeng naturally wouldn't let Miao Jinlei's departure affect tonight's charity gala. The auction continued for more than an hour before the entire charity auction came to an end. At the banquet, in the next hall, Zhang Yueming, Gu Changmin, as well as more than a dozen businessmen from Shanghai who knew Tan Xiu, came over and chatted for a while before everyone went to the next hall. As the host, Zhang Qingfeng pulled Tan Xiu and Mu Weining to sit at the innermost table. It was already 11 p.m. by the time the banquet ended. At the hotel entrance, Tan Xiu separated from Zhang Yueming, Gu Changmin, and some of his friends. After watching them all leave, he immediately made a phone call and Mo all came over in his car. After sitting side by side with Mu Weining in the back seat, Tan Xiu took out his mobile and smilingly asked, "Do you still remember what I told you before? I'm going to let you listen to a big play." "I remember." Mu Weining nodded. "Are you going to call Miao Wentong?" Tan Xiu let out a hollow laugh a few times and said, "Not only am I going to call Miao Wentong, but I'm also going to teach that Miao Jinlei a lesson." Believe it or not, Miao Wentong will definitely fly into a rage and even drive his nephew out of the Miao family. Mu Weining shook her head and said with a charming smile, "I can believe that you can make Miao Wentong teach Miao Jinlei a lesson. But I don't think it's possible for him to drive his nephew out of the Miao family. After all, blood is thicker than water. Even if you have a good relationship with Miao Wentong, you can't control his family, can you?" Tan Xiu let out a strange smile and chuckled, "Hee hee, since you don't believe it, then just wait and see." After saying that, Tan Xiu dialed Miao Wentong's cell number and quietly waited for the call to be connected. Chapter 846. Tan Xiu wasn't someone who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance, so he didn't care about trivial matters. He wouldn't have called Miao Wentong if it was just a trivial matter that happened at the charity party tonight. But Miao Jinlei made his classmate, Hu Qingsong, suffer, so he didn't want to let Miao Jinlei off. He turned on the speakerphone. As the call was connected, Miao Wentong's voice came out of the phone. "Long time no see, brother Miao," said Tan Xiu with a smile. "Where are you making your fortune?" Miao Wentong said with a smile, "Brother Tang, today is really a rare day." Miao Wentong smiled and said, "I can't believe I received your call. I'm in Blue City. I'm about to finish my work here and prepare to go to Shanghai in a few days. There's something important I wanted to tell you," said Tan Xiu with a smile. "But since you're coming to Shanghai in a few days, then forget it. I'll tell you when you come." "Please don't," said Miao Wentong hurriedly. "Brother Tang, please tell me in advance since it's something important." Tan Xiu deliberately hesitated for a moment before he pretended to sigh and said, "Forget it. I'll tell you now since you want to know, brother Miao. Miao Jinlei is your nephew, isn't he? I saw him today." "Brother Tang, my nephew is good, isn't he?" Miao Wentong laughed aloud. "He's good. He's really good." Tan Xiu forced a smile and said, "He's definitely someone who can bring disaster to his family. Today, I've finally experienced it." "That's my nephew, wait, what did you say?" "He's someone who can bring disaster to his family. What do you mean, brother Tang?" Miao Wentong's tone suddenly changed from the phone. "I didn't want to call you at first," sighed Tan Xiu. "But we're good friends and can even be considered as brothers who have gone through life and death together. So I hesitated for a long time before I decided to call you. But alas. Speaking of which, I'm still under the suspicion of tattling." Miao Wentong's tone turned solemn as he said with all seriousness, "You're right, brother Tang. We've gone through dangers together and are brothers who have gone through fire and water. You can say whatever you want to say." Tang Xiu winked at Mu Weining at the side and then said, "Brother Miao, something happened tonight. Anyhow, that's what happened. Speaking of which, it was just a small matter at the charity auction. I know he's your nephew, so naturally, I won't hold it against him. However, apart from me, he has offended Zhang Yueming, Gu Changmin, and Zhang Qingfeng at the same time. That bastard. Miao Wentong was so angry that he almost fainted and cursed. Tan Xiu sighed. Brother Miao, don't be angry. Let me ask you something. Do you know the blind old lady from Miaojiang? Tianji lineage? Old blind man. Miao Wentong suddenly exclaimed. That's right. I have a very close relationship with that old blind man. Tan Xiu nodded and said, it can be said that I'll take care of her when she dies in the future, so I'm a very close elder. That's why I've learned some divination and calculation skills from her. Although I haven't reached the great accomplishment realm, I can still pry into some heavenly secrets from the heavenly Tao according to the inheritance I got. Miao Wentong was aware of Tan Xiu's abilities and had long guessed that Tan Xiu had a terrifying inheritance. If he were to add the skills taught by that mysterious old blind man, then he would definitely surpass his master and reach a terrifying realm in divination and calculation. Miao Wentong suppressed the trembling inwardly and hurriedly asked, Brother Tang, please continue. I've just told you about what happened today. Tan Xiu sighed. Since this charity party is too boring and your nephew is too outstanding, I had a sudden impulse to pry into his fate, but the result, alas. What was the result, Brother Tang? Miao Wentong hurriedly asked. Don't keep me guessing. Tell me quickly, what's my nephew's fate? He's a heavenly cursed lone star with blood in his fate, said Tan Xiu. What? In Blue City, Miao Wentong's complexion instantly turned ghastly pale and disbelief filled his eyes. Even his heart couldn't help but tremble a few times. He should have a magic tool on him that can protect him until now, said Tan Xiu seriously. He'll be safe and sound for the next few years. But starting from his 27th birthday, all the accumulated sins will suddenly erupt. At that time, your Miao family will experience a sudden upheaval. I can already see the scene of the Miao family's blood flowing like a river and corpses strewn everywhere. The final outcome is that he's the only one in the entire Miao family who can survive. He's destined to grow old alone and live the rest of his life in pain and torment. How could this be? Miao Wentong's complexion instantly turned devoid of blood. He didn't doubt Tan Xiu because he knew that Tan Xiu had too many miraculous abilities. But how could this be? He was a cultivator, and the Miao clan was one of the most powerful clans in Haiqing province. They had power and influence, and their wealth was enormous. How could such a colossus suddenly collapse? Inside the car, Mu Weining looked at Tan Xiu, dumbfounded and tongue-tied. The expression in her eyes turned particularly strange. She never dreamed that Tan Xiu's nonsense would actually scare Miao Wentong. After a long time, Miao Wentong asked with a somewhat trembling voice, Brother Tang, what should I do? How can I resolve this calamity for my Miao family? I already have to pay a price for revealing the heavenly secret to you, said Tan Xiu with a forced smile. I'll definitely suffer a stronger punishment from the heavenly Tao if I tell you the way to resolve it. So, I'm sorry. Miao Wentong was silent for a while and then said, Brother Tang, are you in Shanghai now? Wait for me. We'll talk about it when we meet. The call ended. Tan Xiu smiled and put away the mobile phone. He glanced at Mu Weining, who was hesitant to speak, and then said, Do you think I'm a bad person? Miao Jinlei's dandy aura is too strong. Mu Weining shook her head and said, As you said, he'll definitely bring disaster to our family in the future if he continues like this. It's just that I don't understand why you have to be so serious. The smile on Tan Xiu's face faded away. He turned to look at the street scene outside the window and said with a much colder tone, I naturally won't bicker with a young brat if it's only about tonight's matter. It's just 20 million yuan. Zhang Qingfeng can introduce you to a few businesses with this amount of money, so it's worth it. But that Miao Jinlei has made my brother suffer for many days and he has to drink to drown his sorrows. This debt must be settled. You're doing this for Hu Qingsong? Asked Mu Weining incredulously. If Miao Jinlei is a man who values relationships and treats the girl he pursues well in the future, I naturally won't stand up for him. Tan Xiu nodded. But I'm sure you know his character better than me. How can such a dandy young master be devoted to a girl? Therefore, I'm going to make a move because he can't be devoted to her and made my brother suffer endlessly. Let's put it this way. If we didn't meet Miao Jinlei tonight, I might not have taken the initiative to find him and bully him. But since we met, it can be said that the old and new grudges have been added together. Mu Weining suddenly understood and a smile climbed up her face. Then, she softly said, I suddenly realized that it's really good to be your family and friend. At the very least, I don't have to be afraid of being bullied. Why do I cultivate? Tan Xiu let out a faint smile. It's because I want to have the power to protect my loved ones. This world, or the world with living beings, is one where the weak are prey to the strong. Only with absolute power can one live a happy life. I firmly believe that you can do it, said Mu Weining softly. Time fleeted by. It was 4 a.m. in the morning. The door of the deluxe private room of the Century Hotel in Shanghai Hung District was kicked open. 4 burly men rushed into the room like wolves and tigers. Then, Miao Wentong strode in with a gloomy face and a heart full of anger. Inside the bedroom, Miao Jinlei, who was completely naked, was startled awake from his sleep. The girl beside him was only wearing her underwear. When she woke up and saw the burly man rushing in, she was so scared that she screamed and shrank under the blanket, shivering. What are you doing? Miao Jinlei jumped out of the bed in a flurry. He grabbed the pajamas on the floor and put them on. Just as he was about to fasten the belt, a rough slap fiercely slapped his face, directly sending him flying several meters away and heavily falling on the soft carpet. Fuck! You're rebelling. You fucking bastards. You're my uncle's dogs. How dare you hit me? Miao Jinlei was dizzy and couldn't get up from the floor as he cursed. Bim, Miao Wentong's anger was even more intense. When Miao Jinlei tried to get up, he chased him and kicked his waist heavily. He didn't use much strength in the slap just now, but this kick was very heavy. At least, it broke several of Miao Jinlei's ribs. You bastard! Open your dog eyes and see who I am. Miao Wentong didn't seem to vent his anger. He directly grabbed Miao Jinlei's long hair and pulled him up from the floor. After slapping him more than a dozen times in a row, he angrily cursed. Miao Jinlei was beaten until he saw stars and blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. When he was thrown back to the floor, he tried to open his eyes wide and looked at the familiar source of the voice. His body suddenly trembled and he exclaimed, Uncle, why did you hit me? It hurts so much. Miao Wentong pointed at his nose and angrily cursed, hit you? I can't wait to kill you. You bastard. You've made our Miao family offend 4 families in a day. If your dad knew about this, he would have broken your legs and sewed up your dog mouth. 4 families? Miao Jinlei was dumbfounded. When did he offend 4 families at the same time? Did you make a mistake, uncle? I didn't. Miao Wentong angrily shouted, you still dare to be stubborn. Why would Tan Xiu call me to defame you for no reason? Miao Jinlei instantly understood the cause of the matter. Thinking of Tan Xiu and Mu Weining, hatred and resentment appeared in his eyes as he angrily shouted, Uncle, why did you listen to that bastard's side of the story? That's right. I did offend that surnamed Tang, but it was just a bidding war in the charity auction. It's not a deep hatred. Also, you said that I offended 4 families at the same time. That's just a fabrication. Pa. Chapter 847. Miao Wentong was exasperated. He really couldn't believe that his beloved nephew could be so stupid. He had obviously offended them, yet he didn't know it until now. Slap, Deep in his anger, he slapped Miao Jinlei's face again and angrily shouted, Tan Xiu's Tang family, Zhang Yueming's Zhang family, Gu Changmin's Gu family, and Zhang Qingfen's Zhang family. I don't need to tell you about the Tang family. They're the real rich and powerful families in the imperial capital. The Zhang family, the Gu family, and the Zhang family are all rich and powerful families in Shanghai. Which family doesn't have at least 10 billion yuan in assets? Which one of them doesn't have a strong network? You provoked these 4 families at once. Do you want them to join forces to destroy our Miao family? Miao Jinlei covered his cheek, his body trembling in pain. He was about to go crazy. He felt that he had offended Tan Xiu, but Zhang Yueming and Gu Changmin were clearly bullying him. There was also Zhang Qingfeng. How did he offend him? Miao Wentong looked at his nephew's angry and confused expression and was immediately disappointed. His hands trembled as he took out a cigarette, lit it, and took a few puffs. Then, he sat on the edge of the bed and indifferently said, You still don't understand? I just don't understand, yelled Miao Jinlei angrily. I did offend Tan Xiu, but when did I offend those 3 guys? Miao Wentong wanted to kick him again, but he eventually held back and angrily said, Zhang Yueming and Gu Changmin stood up for Tan Xiu during the charity auction. What does this mean? Would they stand up and be hostile to you if they didn't have a good relationship with you? Also, the charity party last night was hosted by Zhang Qingfeng. You directly left just because you were angry and made Zhang Qingfeng look bad under the watchful eyes of the public. Don't tell me you've offended him. Whether it's Zhang Yueming, Gu Changmin, or Zhang Qingfeng, all of them will think that you hate them out of jealousy. Don't tell me you've offended them. Miao Jinlei didn't realize this problem because he was angry before. But now, he suddenly woke up after hearing his uncle's reprimand. In the blink of an eye, his anger had completely vanished, and his entire being was filled with terror. Miao Wentong snorted coldly. He turned to look at the shivering girl in the quilt and shouted in a deep voice, Put on your clothes and get the hell out of here. If you dare to contact this kid again, I'll send someone to throw you into the Huangpu River to feed the fishes. The girl glanced at Miao Jinlei in panic, only to find that he didn't even look at her. Like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bough, she wrapped herself in the quilt and got off the bed. She picked up the clothes scattered on the floor and hurried out of the bedroom barefoot. After quickly putting on her clothes, she did not dare to stay any longer and quickly left the room. Miao Wentong finished the whole cigarette and accurately flicked the butt into the ashtray. He kicked Miao Jinlei to the ground, then got up and walked out the door. You guys take him to the hospital and keep an eye on him for me. If he goes out and causes trouble again, I'll skin him alive. Yes. The 2 middle-aged men looked at Miao Jinlei with an unfriendly expression, and roughly lifted him up from the ground. They clearly remembered that Miao Jinlei had just called them Miao Wentong's dogs. Be gentle. Miao Jinlei screamed. Miao Wentong indifferently looked at Miao Jinlei being carried out. He had an impulse to immediately go to Blue Star Villa complex to find Tan Xiu. But looking at the time, he knew that even if he went to see Tan Xiu at this time, he wouldn't be able to see him. Because if he rashly woke up Tan Xiu from his sleep, it might make Tan Xiu very angry. Alas! It doesn't matter if I offend those 3 families. Even if they are rich and powerful in Shanghai, they can't affect my Haiqing province's Miao family. But offending Tan Xiu is really troublesome. Especially what Tan Xiu said on the phone. If he really doesn't want to help resolve it, then... Miao Wentong took out a cigarette again, and the words Tan Xiu said on the phone kept echoing in his mind. After a long time, he took out his mobile phone from his pocket, dialed a number, and then said in a deep voice, Take out the yellow brocade box from the safe at home and give it to Eru. Tell him to send it to Shanghai as fast as possible. I need it urgently. After saying that, after he hung up the phone, he dialed another number. Second brother, calling me so early in the morning? Did something happen? The voice of Miao Wentong's eldest brother, Miao Wenye, came out of the phone. Something did happen, big brother. Miao Wentong forced a smile. As Miao Wentong told him the whole story, he finally bitterly said, "Big brother, I know Tan Xiu very well. He's definitely not the kind of person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance, nor would he spout nonsense for no reason. That bastard. Second brother, help me break his legs first." Miao Wenye flew into a rage on the phone. Even though he was his own son, he still hated him to the core. "Big brother, I just taught that bastard a lesson, so don't be angry," said Miao Wentong bitterly. "The most important thing for us now is to find a way to make Tan Xiu solve the calamity of our Miao family. You know about that old blind in the Miao region, and you also know how terrifying she is. Tan Xiu is her successor, and coupled with Tan Xiu's own terrifying inheritance, I believe he can help our family. Do you have a way to make him help us?" asked Miao Wenye hurriedly. "I have no way," said Miao Wentong. "That's why I want the Jade Tiger in your hand and the Jade Dragon in mine. Maybe he can help us for the sake of these two things." Miao Wenye hesitated. With a pale face, he said, "Brother Tang, we're brothers who have gone through trials and tribulations together. I know it's not right to ask you to pay a huge price to help me, but my Miao family." Tan Xiu was silent for a long time and then said, "Let me think about it. Besides, there are still several years before that day, so I'm not in a hurry." Apart from feeling helpless, Miao Wentong didn't know what to say after hearing it. Tan Xiu wasn't in a hurry, but Miao Wentong was anxious inside. After all, this matter was related to the safety of his entire Miao family. Shortly after, the two of them talked for a while. Miao Wentong saw that Tan Xiu couldn't make up his mind, so he didn't want to force him anymore. Before leaving, he told Tan Xiu to come back at night. In the living room, Mu Weining watched Miao Wentong's disappearing back and asked in a low voice, "How are you going to deal with this matter?" "It's easy. As long as Miao Jinlei is taught a lesson, it's best if he's driven out of the Miao family to fend for himself outside," said Tan Xiu indifferently. "I can use some means to deceive this matter." Mu Weining nodded and said, "Let's not talk about this anymore. What's your plan for today?" "I haven't thought about it yet," said Tan Xiu with a smile. Mu Weining's spirit suddenly shook and she asked with a smile, "How about you come with me to the company? The company's scale has expanded several times, and the business is booming. Why don't you come with me to deter those people in the company?" Tan Xiu was at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh. "You're a dignified big boss. Do you still need me to deter your employees?" Mu Weining looked a bit delicate as she held Tan Xiu's arm and said, "Of course I need you. The company can reach this scale now, and it's all because of you. The higher-ups in the company respect you as if you were a god. I'm sure that as long as you come to my company, you'll make them fight to the end and won't dare to be disloyal to me from now on. I've become a living Buddha. Do you really think I have the 5 Fingers Mountain?" Tan Xiu said with a smile. He thought that he really had nothing to do today, so he simply said, "Since I have such great power, then I'll accompany you. But I'll tell you first that lunch will be provided." Chapter 848. The business of Mu Weining's advertising company was flourishing with each passing day. The number of employees in the company had exceeded 100, and several of them were the top advertising planners in the country. Now, Tan Xiu had become the legend of this advertising company. Whether it was the former old employees or the new ones, they all knew that the reason why the company could develop to such a scale in just half a year was all because of the big boss's boyfriend, the magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss, Tan Xiu. In the spacious corridor, Tan Xiu followed Mu Weining to the general manager's office. He didn't know that his arrival had caused a sensation in the entire company. Heavens! Big boss's boyfriend is so handsome. If I can have such a capable and handsome boyfriend, I'll probably wake up laughing even in my dreams. He's the magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss. He's really a good match for Big Boss. Look at this handsome Tang, and then look at those ugly people in our company who still want to hit Big Boss. It's really a contrast between a frog prince and a toad. The legendary magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss, the young divine doctor who has caused a sensation in the Chinese medicine industry. I finally saw my idol today. Heavens! Why didn't I see him just now? No way, I must see this great god. What an amazing man. Inside the general manager's office. Tan Xiu sat on the soft sofa with his legs crossed, overlooking the bustling street below. With his back facing Mu Weining, he smilingly said, when a person stands too high and overlooks all living beings, they will have a feeling that it's lonely at the top. Everyone is working hard, yet they don't know that it's just loneliness in the end. Mu Weining couldn't help laughing and said, you haven't reached the highest point yet, have you? Tan Xiu turned around and looked at Mu Weining. He shook his head and said, there are some things I can't tell you for the time being. But I've tasted the loneliness of being an expert. Mu Weining was aware of Tan Xiu's identity as a cultivator, so she nodded and said, whether you'll overlook all living beings in the future or be stranded in the sea of people, I'll accompany you. Tan Xiu said with a smile, I didn't expect that Great Bell Mu's words of love would be so pleasant to hear. You're so annoying. Mu Weining showed a rare girly attitude and gave Tan Xiu a coquettish look. Bang bang, someone knocked on the office door. Mu Weining's secretary was standing outside the door. Boss, Mr. Tang, this is the tea I just made. Thank you. Tan Xiu smiled and nodded. The female secretary left with a smile. Just as she walked out of the door, her voice rang out, what are you all doing here? Hurry up and get to work. Instantly. A lot of voices came from outside the door. Those girls were not afraid of the female secretary. Instead, they giggled and asked about Tan Xiu. In the office, Mu Weining chuckled, I bet that all the female employees in the company won't have the mood to work today. Tan Xiu smiled and said, I'm afraid all the male employees in the company won't be in the mood to work. Finished. The two looked at each other and smiled. At noon. Tan Xiu stayed at the agency for lunch and then left. Mu Weining was going to be busy. Zhang Qingfeng, whom he had met last night, had brought a few business friends over to introduce business to Mu Weining. Returning the favor, Zhang Qingfeng came very quickly. They're fighting, boss. On the way back, Moo, who was driving, received a call and turned his head. What fight? Tan Xiu was confused. The information just came. People from the Special Abilities Bureau are fighting with the Western Bloodkin, said Moo. It's in Paradise Manor, said Moo. Tan Xiu's expression changed. He suddenly recalled Shanjena in Paradise Manor. Could it be that those Western Bloodkin came for Shanjena? Could it be the Stygian Club's people? As he thought up to this point, notify our men in Paradise Manor to warn those Bloodkin not to act rashly again, said Tan Xiu in a deep voice. Don't show mercy if they don't listen to our advice. Understood. Moo took out his mobile again. At Paradise Manor. Duan Mulin was leaning on a dragon-headed crutch with a trace of blood overflowing from the corner of his mouth. The 12 ability users of the Special Abilities Bureau were also injured. They glared fiercely at the 7 people who were surrounded. To be precise, they were 7 winged vampires. At the center. A handsome young man with blonde hair and blue eyes was clad in white casual clothes, but it was stained with blood. The skull scepter in his hand exuded a dark aura. I advise you to get the hell out of here, else I'll no longer care about your identity as Chinese people and won't show mercy to you. The handsome young man twisted his neck, revealing his blood-red eyes and sharp fangs as if he would continue to attack at any time. I warned you last night to get the hell out of China immediately, said Duan Mulin coldly. This is our country, not your Western world. But not only did you not listen to my advice, you even attacked my Chinese people and sucked their blood. The handsome young man let out a grim smile. We need blood. Don't tell me you want us to weaken by feeding on blood? Also, we just sucked their blood and didn't take their lives, nor did we make them our first embrace. Do you think your Special Abilities Bureau would care about such a trivial matter? Those who are not of our race are bound to have a different heart. Duanmu Lin coldly snorted. So get the hell out of China immediately, else don't blame us for killing all of you here. The handsome young man flapped his wings and instantly waved the skull scepter in his hand. 2 black tornadoes appeared out of thin air and fiercely bombarded the 2 ability users. Golden Shield. The moment the 2 ability users were sent flying backward, a middle-aged man from the Special Abilities Bureau unleashed his special ability. Countless metals instantly melted and formed a protective wall in front of the 2 ability users to intercept the black tornadoes. At the same time, a lightning-fast metal needle penetrated the black tornadoes and pierced the handsome young man's chest. The handsome young man let out a disdainful smile. As his chest muscles tightened, the metal needle only pierced half a centimeter and got stuck. The battle was about to start again. At this time, 4 figures flashed lightning fast from all directions. 2 men and 2 women exuded a surging aura. Just as they appeared, both sides' complexions greatly changed and temporarily cancelled their attack. Our boss has ordered that you are not allowed to fight in Paradise Manor. Whoever violates our boss's order, don't blame us for being ruthless, shouted a burly expert of the Everlasting Feast Hall with a murderous aura. Duanmu Lin furrowed his brows and looked at the burly man. Who are you? I'm sure you'll see who our boss is soon, said the burly man indifferently. He's on his way here and will arrive in half an hour at the latest. Half an hour? Duanmu Lin shot a cold look at the 7 vampires and said in a deep voice, since your boss is the owner of this place, we'll wait for half an hour. The handsome young man from the Blood Clan looked at the 4 people who had appeared with vigilance. He could sense how powerful they were. Even though he was confident that he could kill all 4 of them, he couldn't guarantee that there weren't any other experts hiding in the dark other than these 4. Sir, these people from China are too rude. Let's kill them directly, said a vampire with wings flapping. The handsome young man raised his arm to stop the other 6 vampires who were ready to attack. He then looked at the burly man who just spoke and asked in a deep voice, who's your boss? Like I said, you'll naturally see our boss in half an hour, said the burly man coldly. Especially you bloodkin. You're our guests, but don't blame us for killing all of you if you dare to attack before our boss arrives. Arrogant. The handsome young man looked angry, but he didn't move. Time passed. Time passed bit by bit in the deadlock. Ouyang Lulu, who was sitting on the roof of a nearby loft, looked at the people in a deadlock with a solemn expression. She only knew the 4 people who appeared later. They were Tan Xiu's men who stayed in the Paradise Club to protect the place. She had seen vampires before because she had Shan Jenna, a vampire who lived in the Paradise Club. However, Moe had sucked a lot of her blood yesterday, so she went to find Han Jintong out of anger and was not here. Alas, it would be great if Tan Xiu was here. They dared to fight in my place and seriously affected my business. Throw them all out. Ouyang Lulu yawned and looked at her mobile phone screen with a bored expression. More than 20 minutes later. Ouyang Lulu's spirits suddenly jolted, because she saw another car driving over in a hurry. Although she didn't know who was inside the car, at least it was better than wasting time like this. It's really lively here. I hope someone more powerful comes. Ouyang Lulu imagined. However, just as she saw the car stop near the crowd and the door open, a pleasantly surprised look appeared in her eyes. Because she recognized that it was Tan Xiu who came back. Tan Xiu's appearance attracted everyone's attention in the vicinity. However, his brows slightly furrowed when he saw the 2 collapsed buildings around him and the chaotic scene caused by the fight. Senior Duanmu, this matter is over. You'll solve the repair problem. Duanmu Lin glared at Tan Xiu snappily and said, I already guessed who the boss they were talking about was after they appeared. I never thought that this Paradise Manor turned out to be your property. However, our Special Abilities Bureau is not short of money. Compensate. Tang Xiu let out a faint smile and looked at the handsome blonde youth. Then, he indifferently said, I don't give a damn where you come from, bloodkin. You've messed up our place, so you must pay for it. I heard that you bloodkin have a lot of wealth, so you can compensate 100 million. Who are you? Asked the handsome youth coldly. I'm the owner of this Paradise Club, answered Tan Xiu. The handsome youth looked at him all next to Tan Xiu and pondered for a moment before saying, I'm willing to compensate as long as you can make these ability users stop troubling us. Hee hee. Tan Xiu sneered and said, judging from your words, you're not here to stir up trouble in China, are you? You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.